All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Milton School Committee meeting of Wednesday, February 2nd. Happy Lunar New Year to all of you who celebrate, and happy February. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. Does anyone have any adjustments, changes, additions, or subtractions they'd like to make? Dr. Craighead.
I would like to strike 6A, please.
Okay, 6A. Great. I'm actually going to, oh, yes, Dr. Carroll.
Can we please promote Cora Redmond?
Yeah, she's already promoted. Yep,
she's promoted.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Someone was paying to the chat. No, I saw that too. I was just going to call to order and then start. I am going to make, oh, yes, Superintendent Dexter.
So I can't see anybody from the public that's on. So I don't think I have the ability to promote anybody.
I have it. I promoted
okay.
for it. I have it.
Okay, great. All right. I am going to make a change to the agenda. I am going to move the chair's report to towards the end of the meeting. So we're going to have the superintendent's report, the school building committee report. We'll make time for citizen speak. Then we're going to have finance subcommittee, then curriculum and instruction, then health and wellness, then policy, then the chair's report, then the approval of minutes. And then that'll be the end of the meeting. So with those changes, I would like a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
All right, anyone? All right, second?
Second.
All right, we're going to take a roll call vote. This will be a way for us to take attendance as well. Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
Dr. Craighead?
Yes.
Member Rose Marin?
Yes.
Member White?
Yes.
And me, Margaret Eberhardt, yes. Okay, great. With no further ado, Superintendent Jett, you're on.
Thank you, Chair Eberhardt. I'm gonna start first with a quick switch. We're gonna do the MPS targeted review very quickly. It's about maybe 6 slides, that's it. We have with us today, Laura Kane of the Office of District Review and Monitoring as part of DESE, Department of Elementary Secondary Education. As I mentioned earlier in the fall, the town of Milton, or Milton Public Schools, I should say, was randomly selected by DESE for targeted review. Knowing that we went through a quality review last spring, I did reach out to Laura a couple of times. Unfortunately, I don't want to say unfortunately, I still think it's a good thing. This is something that they do all the time, but I will elevate Laura to present. And Laura, would you like me to share and control the slides, or do you have access to share your screen?
Let's see. I do have access, so I'm happy to do it if that works for you.
Yep, that's fine. Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, first, let me say hello before I share. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. It's good to be with you, even though it's virtual. So, as Superintendent Jett said, my name is Laura Rashane. I manage the Office of District Reviews at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, which most people refer to as DESE. And I just have a few slides. We just want some basic information about the district review process. And then once I go through those, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has about the process. Okay, let's see if I can pull this up. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, see thumbs up, wonderful. So just a little bit of background. Again, our office is the Office of District Reviews and Monitoring. We're referred to as ODRM. We've been part of DESE since 2008. And so we've been conducting reviews every year since that time. And I believe this is the first time we've ever reviewed Milton. So I will speak a little bit to the process. So at a very high level, what our goals are with the district review process are, first of all, to bring an outside perspective to the work of the school district. We basically send consultants who are experienced educators and or educational researchers. And our goal is really to have them learn as much as possible about what the school district is doing, with a focus on district systems and practices that might be either supporting or hindering teaching and learning. So we're really interested in that aspect of the district's work. And our goal is also to contribute to districts, school districts' improvement efforts. And so our work is really based on the assumption that every school district no matter what the performance level, no matter what the particular context in that district, that every district is always on an improvement path. And no matter what's going well, we can always get better. And so our goal is to provide information from this review that can help every district to continue to move forward in their improvement journey. And we also want to identify relevant DESE resources that might be helpful for each district. And so once we can come in and learn more about each district, that allows us to identify whether there are particular initiatives or grants or programs that, that we offer that might be particularly useful given each district's unique situation and context. So that's just sort of a very big picture of kind of what our goals are with this process. And I'll speak more to sort of what it actually looks like. But I wanted to just start with that. So people often ask me how are districts selected for this process? And basically, as I said, we've been doing this for many years, and the process looks slightly different each year, but essentially here's what it looks like. So we first put together a list of all districts that are eligible in Massachusetts. And by eligible, I mean a couple of things. First of all, there are public school districts that are not charter or virtual schools. Those are reviewed by a different DESE office. And then eligibility also, frankly, simply just depends on what other comprehensive reviews a district might be getting. So for example, there's a different office at DESE called the Public School Monitoring Office. And every 3 years, they conduct a comprehensive review, which is a much different process and looking at much different things than ours. But they conduct many reviews across the state each year, and we are not eligible. They're basically any district that's getting a comprehensive review from that office cannot also get a review from us. So any district that's receiving one of those reviews, for example, is removed from the list. So it's really more of a scheduling issue that removes many districts. We also typically do not return to a district within 5 years of reviewing them. So again, because we review multiple districts a year, that actually takes several off the list as well. So any district that we might have reviewed last year or 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they come off the list. So basically we sort of narrow it down to a shorter and shorter list. Massachusetts general laws actually that's basically what our office is based on. They do call for district reviews being a part of DESE's work. And the criteria that those laws establish, actually, they're pretty broad. And so they stipulate that a district has to either be low performing or high performing or randomly selected. And so Milton Public Schools was randomly selected from that list of eligible districts. So there was not a particular data point or point of concern, and the same goes for the other districts that were selected this year. Okay, so key elements that might be helpful to know about the process. So first of all, we use a framework that's entirely based on a document from DESE called the District Standards and Indicators, and I'll speak in more detail to those, but basically that's just sort of the major buckets that we look at when we're going into a district. Things like curriculum and instruction, leadership and governance. The process is very evidence-based, and so we gather a great deal of data. First of all, before the review, we look at a number of different documents from the district, and we look at a range of data that DESE collects on all districts, all publicly available. Our team then does an on-site visit during which they speak with as many people as possible throughout the district. And we're actually already working with the district to provide some guidance about sort of how to put those groups together. But we have focus groups and interviews with a range of stakeholders, students' families, teachers, administrators, district leaders, school committee members, and others. So a lot of interviews and focus groups, again, just in an attempt to sort of learn about how the district operates. We also conduct classroom observations. And again, it's a real district level focus. So we are not evaluating teachers, we are not assessing schools, we are actually just trying to get a sense of what does instruction look like across the district and what might be some strengths and areas of growth that we could provide information on. The process emphasizes equity, including racial equity. And so we're very interested in looking at again, sort of how district systems and practices are either supporting or hindering potentially opportunity, access, and achievement for all students. And the process culminates in a report which will be publicly available once it's complete, but it's quite a process to get it to that point. And that report will include a few things. It'll include, again, publicly available data about the district so that a reader can get a sense of things like MCAS performance and a few other indicators. And then the report will really primarily be based on findings, and those findings will be areas of strength where the team feels the district is really excelling, as well as areas for growth, where we're providing suggestions, and we'll actually have specific recommendations linked to those areas of growth where we suggest that the district might continue to move forward. And I will say too, just as an aside, that those recommendations are in no way binding. It's really just our best effort to make suggestions. And that's also actually where we provide some suggested resources as well. But it's really up to each district whether or not they choose to implement those recommendations. The reviews are conducted by our partner, an educational research firm called American Institutes for Research, or AIR. So we went through an extensive RFQ process, and we selected AIR to basically project manage and to implement those reviews. There are two types of district reviews that we conduct. All of the district reviews are, again, based on the standards and indicators that I mentioned. Comprehensive reviews address all 6 of the district standards. Targeted reviews address only 3. All types of reviews do include instructional observations. But so basically what that means is that for Milton, which will receive a targeted review, we don't know yet which 3 standards we'll be looking at, but it'll basically be sort of a subset of that full set. Okay, so the district standards that I mentioned, these are the 6 standards. So we'll be looking at 3 of these again in Milton. So leadership and governance, curriculum and instruction, assessment, student support, human resources, including professional development, and financial and asset management. And each of these, again, these are just sort of the major sort of categories that we look at. And then for each of these standards, there are indicators and sub-indicators. So there's a lot more sort of behind each of these headings, but these are the general areas that we'll be focused on. And so the way the process works, as I mentioned, the team will basically learn as much as they can about the district before the onsite. They'll be reviewing district documents. They'll probably go to the district website just to see what they can learn. We have a data analyst on staff who will compile DESE data so that they can get a sense of that as well. And then, as I said, once they're on site, they'll be conducting interviews and focus groups and conducting classroom observations in all schools in the district. And then after the visit, they will work to develop a draft report, which they then submit to my office. And I have an editing staff that will review that. We'll work with AIR for a while to get that draft to where it needs to be. We then always send a draft to the superintendent to review for factual accuracy. So it's less about sort of getting their opinion about the findings, and it's more about, did we get the name of a school wrong, or are we explaining a particular program inaccurately, things like that. So the superintendent has an opportunity to review that, and then once we get that feedback, we will publish the report on our website. So that's pretty much the process in a nutshell. I apologize if I spoke too quickly, but I wanted to just sort of give you a quick summary, and then, as I mentioned, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Hey, thank you so much, Laura, for that very brief but very comprehensive presentation. Superintendent Jed, you want me to call on people? Do you want to call on people? How would you like to proceed?
I could call on people if, well, I'm starting to see the hands up.
Yep.
And I didn't see whose hand went up first, so I just go.
I saw Dr. Carol Beverly and then Dr. Craighead.
Okay, perfect.
So, hi, Laura, thank you so much for joining us this evening and sharing the update and information. I have 2 quick questions, and one is directly for you, and the other one I'll just put out there, and I'm not sure whether you'll probably be able to answer it, but maybe we can follow up on it another time. My first question is just, can you explain how the 3 standards are selected for a targeted review?
Yep, that's a great question. And so we basically do a few things. So we look at a number of district documents and we look at district data to basically identify, it's a little bit tricky because all of these standards are obviously very interrelated. But basically what we're looking for is, are there particular standards where we think the district might benefit from having someone come in and look and do a deeper analysis? And so there are basically 2 sets. So we either will do what we call a student-centered review, and that is the curriculum instruction, assessment, and student support standards. Or we'll do what we call a governance and administrative systems review, and that looks at the leadership and governance standard, the HR and PD, professional development standard, and financial and asset management. And as I mentioned, both of those will include classroom observations, but it'll be one of those sets. And again, it'll be sort of looking at data and documents to figure out whether one of those sets might benefit more from having a perspective of the team.
Okay, thank you.
For the next question, Laura, I'm just going to ask you if you kindly stop sharing your screen if we're doing questions so that way we can see.
I just had one other question, which was about our, you may know that Milton underwent a school quality review process last year that the district proactively chose to engage in. And so from that lengthy report, we have a number of recommendations and suggestions. So I guess I'm assuming, but maybe you could confirm or clarify the time frame of when this report with recommendations is delivered. Is that the end of this academic year?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So I'm not able to give a specific date. I will say our goal is to get a report to a district within about 3 months after an onsite. We aim for quicker than that, but it depends on a lot of factors, including how many other districts' reports we're working on at the time. But yeah, our goal is to turn it around as quickly as possible so that, again, we really want this to be something that's actually useful for the district. And so we know the longer we wait, the less relevant the information is.
Okay, great. And yeah, that just connects to the last sort of thing I just put out there. I'm sure we all are thinking about this, that we will want to figure out how we can synthesize the recommendations from both of the reports, because we're still very early on in responding to the recommendations from the school quality review. And so depending, I suppose, on which of the standards end up being targeted for this, there will either way be things in the other report that are not covered by what you all will be doing. So I just put out there that will be a job for us to kind of figure out how we incorporate both sets of recommendations in terms of, how we're moving forward. But I'm excited for this process, and thank you.
Great, thank you.
Member Ross Denny.
Good evening, Laura, and thank you for joining us. I would like to know if there'll be any resources allocated to correspond with any recommendations you may have.
So that's a great question. We don't typically, that's a great question. So it's not part of our typical process. So it's not necessarily the case that we have particular resource and then the funding just follows immediately. However, there are situations that happen pretty regularly where there might be a grant opportunity that's still a competitive grant, but it might be something where we're able to say, hey, since we've seen this particular thing that this district is working on, we can connect you to someone to learn more about this grant opportunity, for example. But there's not a direct link between the recommendations and funding.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Member Rosemary.
Yeah, another quick question. Thank you, Laura, for coming. Is there some place that we can access the DESE standards and indicators so we can just know what the things are?
Absolutely. Yes, it's actually on our website. And so, in fact, I can put it in the chat once we're done with this segment, if it will be helpful.
Terrific. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Chair Abahat.
Thank you. Thank you again. So Laura, just a few logistical questions I have for you. So we had some concern and input from the community last year about people coming into classrooms to do observations, about surveys for students. So I would like to quell some of those concerns before we get this process rolling. So could you tell us a little bit about the people from the American Institute for Research who come into the classrooms to do observations? How do you vet these people? Do they undergo a background record check? Are they quarried? Are they fingerprinted? And just to assure that you share that information with the district?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. That's a great question. So AAR actually uses a classroom observation tool called CLASS. And this is, this is actually used nationally. And so their observers are very experienced in using this, and they actually go through a certification process, which is pretty rigorous, to make sure that they all have a very clear understanding of what each item, what they're looking for. They are all quarried. They meet all background check requirements that we have here in Massachusetts. They will all be masked. They have a vaccine mandate as well. We do at DESE and they do in their company. So everyone will be vaccinated and masked. And again, they're very experienced in doing this, and they are, that includes really being as unobtrusive as possible. So they are not going to come in and be the center of attention. I mean, they really know how to kind of come in the classroom, get a sense of what's happening, and head out. And they also, I will say too, again, hopefully this is clear, but it's really, we try to reassure everyone, this is not about evaluating any teachers. They're not writing down their names. It's really about identifying trends across the district. They won't be speaking to any administrators about anything that they see. It's really just about sort of trying to get a sense and a feel of what instruction is like in the district.
And I know that you'll have focus groups that you indicated you'll be speaking to teachers, administrators, perhaps some school committee members. Will there be focus groups that involve students? Will there be any additional surveying of students? And could you share that information with the community?
Yes, that's a great question. So we are really interested in including student voice in this process. And so we will have at least one, probably two student focus groups. We basically, our policy is to provide guidance to each district as to how to put these together. So we will not reach out to students directly, but the district will do that. And we will collect parental consent for all of those students that are invited to do that. That's a requirement that we have as well. We also we don't have a survey that we use specifically, but we do look closely at a survey called Vocal that DESE does in conjunction with the MCAS. So that's an optional survey that students have the opportunity to take if they'd like to when they complete the MCAS. And so that also gives us a sense of students' perspective about things like school climate.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
So on behalf of the district, Laura, and I really appreciate you committed very early on to coming to the evening to help us explain this to the district. So I appreciate your time, your communication. I look forward to the ongoing communication throughout this process. And please extend my appreciation to Emily Ackman, who's the representative from AIR, who will be working with the district. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It was great to speak with all of you. Should I put that website in the chat, or should I just send it to you, Superintendent Jett, and have you distribute it? Or
either way, whatever works for you. If not, you can send it to me and I'll send the school committee everything that you send me.
Okay, why don't I do that, and that way I can move on, let you get on to your next item. Okay. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful evening.
You too.
Take care.
And without further ado, and I do want to thank the high school, Milton High School Site Council for their patience. But at this time, I'll turn it over to Principal Cahill and her team for the introductions and let them share with you their Site Council presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Jett. Good evening, school committee members, community members. Thank you for having us this evening. I'd like to introduce to you some of our Site Council members. I have Assistant Principal Ben Kelly, School Librarian Jay Troy, if everyone can just wave so people can see you, School Adjustment Counselor Jenny Beliveau, and two student reps, Kiara Glazer, who's a junior on the Site Council, and Baron Clancy, who is a senior on the Site Council. So tonight you'll hear from all of us in regards to different aspects of Milton High School. So again, thank you for having us this evening. I do appreciate the opportunity to share our school improvement plan with you, what we've been doing as a high school and steps that we're taking to implement our school improvement plan. So I am going to share my screen and I'm going to give this a shot, so please bear with me for a second. If you watched me at our faculty meeting today, it did not go well, so here I go. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. So I'm going to go back to the beginning then. I'm sorry. Don't look ahead. So the school site council also has a few more members. We have Jenny Lowe, who from the class of 2025. She couldn't attend this evening. She is celebrating the Lunar New Year with her family. And Tucker Gorman, sophomore. Anna Lyons, one of our current members, and Kathy Huntington, who's been a community member for a few years now. So I just want to give everyone recognition where it is due. We meet monthly on Thursdays before school, and I would just like to start. So earlier this year, there was a presentation on school data, and I just want to do a little reflection so you know where we're at and how we're using the school data and the steps that we're taking. Last fall, the fall of 2020, we had a visit from NIASC. And in the spring, or when we presented our school improvement plan last January, we presented those initial findings with you. October 2022, they're coming back for the official visit for Milton High School. So when they did the initial collaborative visit, they made recommendations to us that we need to have in our school improvement plan that actually complement the school district the school and the district strategic plan. So using that information, you have in front of you this evening the school improvement plan, which I'll get to in a moment, but actually the presentation this evening, which is about our school improvement plan and the steps that we're taking here. So to start with all of this, over the past few meetings, you have seen the data of MCAS, AP, and SAT. Vivu, the data analyst for the district, has presented that information. And the question always is, what are we doing with that data? How are we interpreting that data? What are we doing to support the students and the staff in analyzing that data and implementing supports? So what you're going to see this evening, we're going to touch upon the data briefly. And what I learned today, and I didn't realize it when Vivu did her presentation, but it was sent to you, that when you actually take a PowerPoint presentation and put it into Google, it loses some of the labels. So this information that we're looking at right here is the grade 10 English MCAS subgroups. And if you're looking at the information from left to right, and we do have all of the subgroup information listed on a further slide, but it lists all of our subgroups: students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged, African American and Black, Asian, Hispanic, multi-race, white, all students, and state students. So we do have that information, but I will show you that to you. But I find it important to share the MCAS data with you as we go through this to show the growth that we've made, the growth that we still have to make. So this is the ELA, and then we have the math subgroups, and we all can recognize when we look at the math subgroups that we do see the gains that we've made overall with grade 10 ELA, but the work that we still have to do for grade 10 math. And so again, as I've already said, we are going to touch upon some of the supports we've put into place for the unfinished learning and for supporting students in the classroom when it comes to the MCAS data. We've made these observations not just as a school, but as a district, and going over not just from MCAS, but the SAT data again. This has been spoken about. Ben Kelly spoke about it at one of the last meetings along with Milton High School department heads. You know, we see that decrease in the class of 2021 in taking the SAT exam. But keep in mind that that particular class, that senior class, did not have access to that exam. So what we did for that class of 2021, we offered 2 fall tests, 2 school-based administrations for us seniors to take the SAT, so they had that access. Even though colleges were going test optional, and they continue to do that, and they continue to reflect on college and career readiness and what do we need in order to see what students are attending college. We do notice that 73% is significantly lower than the participation rate in other years. We are going to continue to offer that school day SAT testing. We feel that is an important thing to do as it's more accessible for all of our students. And it is that way, any student can come into the building, and this is purely for Milton High students. We do it on the same day that we administer the PSA testing to our 10th and 11th graders. So it's just a day of testing for everybody, except for our 9th graders, where we do a digital citizenship day on getting them acclimated to the high school, what skills do they need to be successful at the high school, and how can we make sure that they know all the services that exist. So while this number is 73% for the class of 2021, we will have data at the end of this year on how many students have actually participated in SAT for the class of 2022. The College Board releases that at the end of every year, so I'm happy to present that at a later time once we have all of that data available. We also have administered the SATs over the past 3 years, and again, very happy to say for this coming May, we've ordered over 800 AP exams that will be administered in May. And while it's different this year, we're going back to those traditional tests. Last year and the previous year, that AP data was very different than it had been previous experiences. Usually that experience is a paper-based test. You sit and it's 3 to 4 hour exam, sometimes 4.5 hours. Past 2 years, some of it's been online, some of it has not been online. So it's also students adapting to these constantly changing testing conditions. So that is something we are very aware of in our classroom, and how the teachers are administering these exams, these practice exams for our students as well. Our takeaway also from AP is also that how can we also, as a high school, be sure that all of our students know that these classes are accessible for all of them. And today, during our staff meeting, we did talk about briefly the course selection process that's coming up for next year, and how we go into class. We will be going into classes. Our counselors will be going into all of the classes, and teachers will be having conversations with their students and just saying, these are the courses that are available to you. One thing that Milton High School does allow is while our teachers make those recommendations to students, which they feel is in their best interest, students and families are allowed to have those conversations and say, well, this is what I'm thinking of taking, and this is why I want to take that course. So we listen to those conversations, and we encourage students to take what they feel is in their best interest, while not overwhelming them, to stress them out, as they also are involved in all of these extracurricular activities, holding jobs, helping out families. So we always think for students, find that balance. The courses that meet you are going to challenge you, help you prepare for what are you doing after you graduate from high school. But again, finding that balance in your life as well. So all of this data, and these are just parts of the data presentation. I know there are a lot more slides to go over, but we say, okay, we have this data, and what are we doing with it? So while we're calling that satellite data, now we try to get closer to home. We look at Milton High School, and what are the experiences that we're taking away from this data and implementing every day in the classroom. So what I mean by that is we have these meetings, and this information is going to help us inform our teachers and work with our teachers to figure out the ways that we can support our students' academic skills in conjunction with the data to support their own personal growth and their understanding. And with this qualitative data and this quantitative data, we can move forward to make sure all of the students are having the best experiences possible. So as we go on, I'm going to be speaking, Ms. Bellavo is going to be speaking, Jay Troy, Mr. Kelly, and the students, just about what are these experiences looking like. So in the school improvement plan, there are 4 points in our school improvement plan that NEASC has asked us to focus on, and it also complements some of the goals in the district strategic plan. And we have to keep in mind those NEASC goals as they're coming back in the fall, and they're going to make sure that we are implementing these things so we stay accredited. The first one is, as a high school, our first priority goal is making sure we have a mission statement and a vision of a graduate. What do we want our students to learn while they're at Milton High School, and what skills do we want them to leave with? And then the second priority area in our school improvement plan is curriculum and instruction. How are we improving our curriculum and instruction? How are we delivering it? How are we using this data to make sure that we're making the best informed decisions when we do our curriculum reviews? And most, you think about what's happened over the past 2 years, it's made us think more about our student engagement. Are our students engaged the way they should be? Are we allowing them to access the curriculum the way they can? And how are we supporting them, and how are we getting them engaged? And then finally, the ongoing conversation, not just at Milton High School, but in the district, facilities. Do we have the actual structure and the space to support the students and the teachers and do all of the great things that we want to day in and day out? So those are the 4 primary areas of the school improvement plan. As I go through this presentation, we're going to start with priority area number 1. And you're going to see that those are what we see for a vision of a graduate. And then you're also going to see how priority area 2 and 3 are intertwined in with our vision of any student who goes through Milton High School. through the lens of a graduate. This is how we work on curriculum and instruction. This is how we do student engagement and support. So hopefully you'll be able to see that through the conversations that we're having this evening to support our students. So as I said, priority area 1, we're connecting everything that we do at Milton High School to the vision of a graduate. And this picture is just one, this is our first, for this year, our Vision Award winners. And we started this last year. And if you watch school committee, probably a year ago, we were talking about our Vision Awards. And that's something we started first term last year for our remote and hybrid students. And the students and the staff voted on those students who we feel really live up to our points of a vision of a Milton High School graduate. And this year, site council members, we had a meeting. We're like, how can we improve upon this? What can we do more of? And we incorporated staff members who also live up to the expectation of the vision of a Milton High School graduate or a person. And so what you see here in this picture are students across every discipline, along with food service lead person at the high school, Elaine Moore, and Chrissy Martinelli, who is one of our special ed teachers. And we see all of the other students. We see all of the students who are all also nominated by their peers or teachers for our first term Vision Awards. We're going to be doing it again over the next few weeks for term 2, and you'll be seeing that. But I just think this is very reflective of our student body. And again, everything that we do here at the high school, not just the Vision Awards, but the student handbook and the policies that we have in place and the curriculum that we talk about and the curriculum review that is happening across the curriculum, we are thinking about everything for the high school and who our students are. At any point in time, if you have questions, please feel free to jump in. But if not, we'll just keep talking. The mission statement from Milton High School: we want to cultivate a supportive environment that graduates students who are equipped to reach their potential and contribute to the global community by engaging them in a rigorous, enriching educational program that emphasizes respect, achievement, and citizenship. It's something that we say to our students. It's in the handbook, it's on our webpage, and it's in everything that we do. The first slide that we're going to be talking about is going to be the first step, the vision of a graduate. What's the first thing we're asking students to do? We're asking them to effectively apply critical thinking skills and make connections and solve problems. So as we say that, what we would like to show you are some of the things that we're doing in the classroom, outside the classroom, to make sure we're meeting all of these needs. And I'm going to be asking Ben Kelly to step up and talk about this piece.
Sure, thank you. So as Principal Cahill mentioned, there's plenty of crossover between the school improvement plan priorities and our new year-old now vision of the graduate. Our priority area number 2 in the school improvement plan on curriculum and instruction connects really explicitly to the first 3 tenets of the vision of the graduate. So here we want to show you what this looks like, how it's being lived at Milton High School. And our students are living this first tenet of the vision of the graduate in 2 ways. In the curriculum between 750 and 219, and the culture building and extracurricular activities that we have throughout the rest of the day that we offer all of our students. So some examples of how our students at Milton High are applying critical thinking skills and making connections to their world and solving problems are some of the steps that our curriculum leaders and teachers are taking to make sure we're moving further up Bloom's taxonomy, if you will, or making sure we're analyzing, creating, and evaluating in our work. One example recently, instead of our students coming in and summarizing a text, a raisin in the sun, for example, a recent writing prompt asked students to research demographics in the housing market in Boston and make connections to the text, to apply their learning and make it relevant, make it recent, and make it something that's close to home. In mathematics, our students aren't just learning formulas and calculating percent errors on paper, but you may have seen in one of the recent blog posts, our students are out there safely driving in their cars, appropriate speeds, but measuring percent error in odometer readings and speedometer readings by taking measurements of actual vehicles and calculating that out on the fly on the sidewalks to see what sort of factory errors are involved with when car manufacturers put cars on the road. So they're doing these calculations to really connect, to solve problems that are out there and make connections to their actual world. Project-based learning, like these examples, are happening across our curriculum. Those are just a couple. Outside of the school day, we have clubs and activities that our students are going to talk about in just a minute that are requiring our students to think critically and literally solve problems in our world. And then another program that we are just recently implementing, as my lights go out, sorry. Another program that was just recently implemented is a pilot internship program that we hope to have bigger and better in future years, putting students in the workforce, solving with their hands-on experiences, and to take all that they've learned and apply it in a new way. And I think we have a couple students who are going to speak a little bit to some of the extracurriculars, how they help to embody this first pillar of the vision of the graduate.
So Kiara, do you want to talk about the model debate and model UN, and then Baron, the biotechnology?
Yeah, sounds good. So I'm on both the debate and model UN teams or clubs, and most recently the model UN team had the opportunity to go to a conference that was hosted by Harvard, and that was last weekend. We spent the weekend, we stayed over, and we spent 4 days, over 20 hours in committee, focusing on discussing different topics, different issues around the world, and trying to come up with our own resolutions. So a lot of that, we did a lot of research beforehand from topics. I was talking about global security. We had someone talking about women and climate change, or climate change and trade was Baron's topic. So we took a lot of these real world problems, spent hours upon hours researching them, coming up with our own ideas, trying to apply the information we had learned. And then in committee, we focused on giving speeches, having productive debate, and then finally working with kids from around the world. I met people from Venezuela, Brazil, Kurdistan, and even someone from Quincy. So we had the opportunities to work with a whole lot of people on these major issues and to use our research to come up with our own solutions as a way to help improve our own learning outside of school. And debate similar, you do a lot of research, you work on writing a paper, you compare a lot of, you write for both sides, you look at both sides of an issue, and you compare, and then we usually do a day or two of just debates for some local tournaments. So that's another way that we're able to both benefit our own research skills and work on our own public speaking.
Thank you, Kiara. Baron?
Yeah, so within the curriculum, I guess, this past semester, I had the privilege to take the biotech course at the high school. And I feel like it really embodies this idea of curriculum embedded thinking and problem solving. The course itself is really focused around labs rather than just learning like stuff off slides, as many other science courses are focused on, which is really helpful because focus your learning around doing rather than just sitting there and listening to lectures. So for example, rather than learning about some method or the way a cell does something, we actually test it. We might break open a bacteria and test its DNA to determine whether we've inserted a plasmid or something like that. As we're doing this, we're kind of going through how this works within the organism and stuff. And it really provides a really engaging opportunity because you aren't necessarily zoning off in class to go through slides, rather you're actively doing what the scientists would do. And as you're doing what the scientists are doing, you're kind of learning why you do it and what it's all about. And personally, since I want to go into biology, I think it's offered me a really good foundation just in the field and stuff like that. Yeah.
Thank you, Baron. Thank you. So this is, as we said, some of these are, Betty? School Committee Member White?
That's okay. You can call me Betty. I was just wondering if the students could comment a little bit, and John, you already did, but just ask about this experiences that you just had, how that impacts your thinking about, your future in terms of your educational choices and career paths.
I can start really quickly. So I've been doing Model UN since the 7th grade, and I started debate freshman year. And overall, I found that I really enjoy the topics that we've discussed, and I'm now even considering like a major in international relations. And it's been a really great opportunity for me to discover my own interests outside of a school environment while still being productive in my own learning. So I'll pass it off to Baron.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I also do Model UN. So on a similar note, I would say I did come into high school thinking I was going to be only bio, just go into science, but having these other opportunities to kind of expand my thinking skills, both in and out of the classroom. I took AP US History last year, which offered some amazing opportunities to engage with our past and present. It's kind of expanded my world to kind of past the science, past the numbers, all that kind of stuff. And now I'm considering majoring in public health, which is kind of more the intersection of biology and current affairs. Yeah.
Thank you, Baron. Thank you, Kiara. As we move on, as I had said, the school improvement plan is intertwined into these steps of a vision of a graduate. So the next point of a vision of a graduate is all Milton High School students will utilize technology to engage, explore, and evaluate our community, nation, and world. And as we look at this particular point in our vision, I'm going to ask Jay Troy, our school librarian, to talk about some of the points in this slide.
Absolutely. So similarly, this is broken down curriculum and extracurricular as well. And in collaboration with classroom teachers, students come up to the library to work on research projects across all disciplines. By having a certified school librarian, the state actually grants us access to over 50 databases, which provides access to thousands of articles that students and staff have access to. So over the course of a student's high school career, they will learn effective search strategies, how to evaluate information, and through different class projects, have the opportunity to synthesize and share information through a variety of mediums. This is the first year that we transitioned from a BYOD program to a one-to-one program for our 9th graders. So what that means is instead of students bringing their own devices in the first day of their 9th grade year, they were issued a school device, and that provided some ease of transition from Pierce into the high school, allowing students to have something familiar with them. And it also provided access to a similar set of resources for each student. Last year, we were able to hire a part-time instructional technology coach who works between both Pierce and the high school. And this person provides professional development, works one-on-one with teachers, and provides additional support in the classroom for technology-related projects. So this allows students and staff to move from using technology as a substitute for traditional tools towards using technology in transformative ways. And some examples of this across the curriculum and across disciplines are using podcasting units in English, 3D printing in science classes, and using the green screen to create different videos in history classes. This year, as Principal Cahill mentioned earlier, during the PSAT day, we offered our 9th grade Digital Citizenship Day, which is half-day interactive sessions for our 9th graders. And those workshops range from how to organize life within Google and use all those tools to spotting misinformation online, cyberbullying, and self-care. And then beyond those experiences that all of our students have within the classroom, for folks that are interested in pursuing technology a bit further, whether that's during electives or extracurricular, there are plenty of opportunities. One that I would like to highlight because it happens in the library is the Student Technology Assistance Team, which is an internship that students can participate in. The staff members, we call them, are the first point of contact for everything Chromebook related. So whether it is loaning out devices, troubleshooting issues, repairing devices from across the entire district, elementary schools and middle schools. It's a great opportunity for students who are interested in technology, those who enjoy problem solving, working with their hands and learning new things. And so in addition to all of those electives and opportunities, there's also the 3D printing club, the performance tech club, and the robotics club. And so now we'll turn it back to Principal Cahill.
Thank you, Jay. As we continue on, the third step for a vision of a graduate, that everyone will be original and innovative in individual and collaborative work. Here, I'd like to point out, a few weeks ago, the district, it was Computer Science Week, and our students at the high school who were part of the computer science classes at the high school, they actually virtually visited the elementary schools. And this is something that they've done over the years. And if you walked around Milton High School, you would be able to see sheets of paper outside people's rooms, written in code, what your name is, what the office is. And they do that every year. And for those, there were people that were visiting the high school, had never been there before. They're really impressed by those types of things. We have the engineering projects that we've touched upon as well. The engineering class is still, a few years in the making, and we're still trying to encourage more students to be exposed to that particular elective at the high school. We have the project-based learning across the curriculum, and I'm going to get a little bit more into that as further down in some of the other slides as we talk about our grading for equity and the work that we've been doing there. When you look at the pictures on this page, right across everywhere, when you walk around Milton High School, the students are working together. The students are taking initiative. The students are taking the lead in a lot of the conversations that are happening. They want to have their voice being heard, and we do listen. Last Friday, I did a breakfast with Mrs. Cahill. I emailed the entire student body, and with the support of students who are on my DEI committee, we sat with students in the cafeteria before school and just listened. What are your concerns? What are we doing well at? What do we need to improve upon? And there was some great feedback from the students that attended. And so those are the types of things where we're listening and students being creative and working with one another and with the teachers to really make sure they are involved in their education, not just passively sitting there listening. They are actively involved in their education. The fourth step in a vision of a graduate is all Milton High School students will practice good citizenship, personal responsibility, and character through individual and collective actions. And this is a big step for all of our students and staff. And at this time, Jenny Beliveau is going to be speaking about this slide, and Kiara and Barron are also going to be speaking about this slide and the things that we're doing for professional development for our staff, what student government is doing, what they're getting out of sessions with their counselors. So Jenny Beliveau, go ahead.
Of course. Thank you so much, Principal Cahill. I really appreciate it. Hello, everyone. So I'm really excited to talk about the Trauma Sensitive School program that we just started this year. So actually this past summer, we were awarded a 3-year grant. It was provided to us from Beth Israel Hospital Milton to support building trauma sensitive schools. So just to give you a little information on what a trauma sensitive school is, it's one in which all aspects of the educational environment, so from workforce training to engagement with students and families to procedures and policies, they're all grounded in an understanding of trauma and an understanding that of what trauma, the impact it can have on people. And it's designed to promote resilience for all. So the first step in this process with this grant was to train all Milton Public School staff in understanding trauma and its impact. So this training actually happened during professional development in November. So all staff across the district were able to sit in on this training. Following this all staff training, educators then completed a survey to assess their individual schools' readiness to change. So the data from this survey is actually going to be evaluated this month by working groups that are in the process of being developed at each of the schools. So these trauma working groups, the goal for them for the rest of the school year is to evaluate the data, come up with action plans that are going to be specific to their schools that will help work towards creating trauma sensitive schools. And then we're going to collaborate as a district, all the working groups will get together and collaborate as far as what are some district-wide goals of what we need to implement over the next 2 years. So we're really excited about this opportunity and really excited to do the work to make sure that Milton Public Schools are trauma sensitive schools. Now I'd love to hand it over to Barron and Kira to talk a little bit about group guidance.
Yeah, sure, I can start. So basically at Milton High School, there's this program of group guidance where every so often guidance counselors come in and talk to the students. In the freshmen, sophomore, levels, more just to get them acclimated to high school, but it's actually really important in your senior year because you start talking about colleges and future plans, whether you're going to college, to a career, or into the military or armed services. So I don't know if Kira, you want to start talking about how they start talking about that in junior year?
Sure. So as of right now, we've already had a couple of group guidance sessions just about, first we started with the basics of where we would want to go to college, what's in our price range, and kind of what we would maybe want to focus on to kind of start talking about what we were thinking in terms of college. And then we also had a discussion about what our academic transcripts mean, where you might need to look at academically to figure out what colleges might be a good fit for you, as well as discussing other options outside of college, 4-year college, such as 2 years community college, or even going into a trade or the military, like Baron said. So we've had that opportunity, and I was also lucky enough to be able to go. Milton High School hosted a college night with, I believe it was 6 different lectures that you could go to that covered different aspects of the college search. We went to one that was about what was considered in the admissions process that was done by 2 admissions officers from different colleges. And that was just a great way to kind of, this is my family's first time going through the college process. So there's a lot that we have to figure out. And considering it's my junior year, we're kind of at the time where we need to start getting more information. So that session was really helpful. And I've even had the opportunity to meet with my guidance counselor one-on-one to talk about college and get that process started. So overall, I've had a lot of opportunities to be able to start thinking about college and getting into that mindset of applications before we actually have to start applying senior year.
Yeah, I would echo those sentiments. Even in junior year last year during the pandemic, when there really wasn't as much time to meet as a group guidance, I found the classroom, the Google Classroom that they created to post all the documents we needed to be really helpful. I also met one-on-one multiple times with my guidance counselor to discuss options. And I thought the guidance department in general in high is very good in helping construct a list between emphasizing safeties and targets, but also really encouraging you to apply for your regions. You know, I've heard so many stories from other schools, guidance counselors telling their students, hey, you're not going to get in here, don't even bother applying. And it's definitely not the case here. They're very, very supportive of students' dreams. And then once you get into senior year, I noticed basically we started getting down to the nitty gritty, talking about transcripts, sending everything that we need to be sent, and then filling out this really long survey that guidance counselors use to write their kind of small letters of recs for you, but also for the scholarship evaluations in the future. And I thought it was actually really good that they kind of sent out the survey for us, because even before writing college essays, it was a good way to kind of get thoughts organized. But then, of course, it's going to go to the scholarship selection committee and help the guidance counselors in writing kind of our letters of rec. So, you know, I put effort into it, and I think I got a decent amount of return from it, which was really helpful. I think that's about all I have to say.
Thank you, Baron. Thank you, Kara. So the guidance department does work with the students as far as the college process. And as they said, it looks different for every student, but they do the one-on-one meetings, they do the group guidance meetings, they've created Google Classrooms where all of this information is readily available. And just to finish up this particular slide, if you read the weekly newsletter, we're always giving shout outs to different organizations and clubs at the high school that are doing outreach for within the community or outreach with outside the community. And again, it's the students that are running these events. It's not the teachers that are asking for these events to happen. Well, the teachers supervise these groups. It's the students coming and saying, we want to do this fundraiser. What do you think? Can we do this? And the students are working so well with the staff, and the feedback from the community has just been great. So thank you, Jenny, Baron, and Kiara. The last point of a vision of a graduate is all Milton High School students will demonstrate understanding and respect for themselves and the diversity of ideas, cultures, abilities, and lifestyle in school and beyond. And there's just a few things on here that I'd like to touch upon. You are going to be discussing the program of studies later on, but I think it's important to talk about the English electives here proposed for grade 12, because in order to get to this process, what was involved was not just conversation with the staff. Allison McHugh, who's the head of the English department, had conversations with the English department and with the students and saying, what can we do differently? What do we see missing in our current English curriculum? What do students and what do staff want to see in the books that we're reading? Do you feel represented in what we're doing? So there was a lot of conversation, and you have that information from the program of studies, you know, the research that they had done. But it's making sure that, and I've said it before, making sure our students and our staff see themselves in the curriculum that we implement at the high school, not just in English, but in, you know, in the history classes and across the curriculum. We have those conversations, you know, the current events, and sometimes they are hard topics to have in class. But when we know those topics are going to happen, we let the counselors know, and we let the teachers know that the department heads are available and administration is available. And, you know, if we know a student might be triggered by a hard conversation, we make sure that we have those supports available in place for those students. What I also want to point out is, I don't know if anyone had an opportunity. I know school committee member Ross Denny was there. Friday night, the Asian Culture Club hosted an event in the library, and it was for the entire district. And I believe when all was said and done, about 200 people showed up for this event. And I was there early on, and the students, I was talking to Jay Troy, and Jay had said students who were running the event came up Friday after school. They set the event up, and it was just awesome. And everything from the implementation and the thought process to the event in and of itself. Joyce White is their advisor, and she was there. And it was such an amazing event. And it wasn't just the Asian Culture Club, but so many other groups from the high school. The French club was there, the Hispanic club was there. There were so many different clubs there that were represented. And some parents in the community, from students at the elementary level and the middle school level, reached out and just said, you know, I just want to let you know I was at that event with my family. You guys did a great job. And my response back was, it wasn't me, it wasn't, you know, it was the students. And I forwarded that email to the students who were running it, because I really was so impressed by the amount of time and effort. And school committee member Ross Denny, I don't know if you were just as impressed with the event as I was, but I just feel I was completely overwhelmed with how great it was. So that was just one of the experiences. When we talk about making sure our students see themselves in everything that we do. And the last point on here is grading for equity. And I do want to talk about this. This is something that we started this conversation last spring. You know, we look at the students and we think about how our students have handled the past 2 years. And for some students, there hasn't been a break in their education, and they've just continued to do what they do. And some students thrived with the remote learning, and some students thrived with the hybrid, but there were also students who really struggled. We all know that. And how did we work with our students? And, you know, as a staff, we had those conversations of, what does our grading need to look like? How can we support our students? What practices do we have in place that we need to reflect upon as a department or as a school, as individuals, to make sure all of our students are showing mastery of content in any class that they're in. And so I'm going to tell you in a little bit what we did, a conversation that we had today in our staff meeting as we talk about that. But just to close out the school improvement plan, Ben Kelly is going to talk once again. He did this last year too, about the facilities and where we're at with our facilities right now.
Sure, thank you. So our final school improvement plan priority area doesn't fit nicely into the lens of the vision of the graduate, but it's more about making sure we have both sufficient and adequate space in our building to deliver the exemplary curriculum that we want to deliver. And as many members on the school committee know from our facilities meetings, and Mr. O'Rourke, I think, is on here, so I'm excited to hear the school building update later. But Milton High School is not immune to the growing numbers in Milton. We are actively planning for each year. We look at the NESDEC projections with great anticipation and our current enrollments to make sure that we're utilizing every available space in our building, from former closets and labs to create new classroom spaces and flexible spaces in our building. And part of this priority area too is also making sure that we are outfitting the space that we do have with the appropriate materials, furniture, supplies to deliver an appropriate 21st century education. We are starting to look at ways to get away from having every classroom be desks and rows and have more collaborative workspaces. Of course, COVID hasn't helped this with some of the spacing requirements we've gone through for a couple of years, but we hope to get back on track as we order new furniture or update classrooms to look at the sort of work environments our students are going into, the college environments they're going into, and make sure that Milton High School is a mirror to those places as well. So again, it doesn't fit nicely into the vision of the graduate, but equally important to make sure we have the appropriate facilities and plans to educate our students.
Thank you, Ben. So I go back to the grading for equity, and I want to continue what we started at the beginning of the slide. You know, we've talked about the data, we've seen the data, we've discussed how can our instruction be improved from the data that we have. So today was an early release day at the high school or in the district, and that conversation I said we started last spring, we've continued to have. The high school leadership team has been working on professional development within the departments and for the high school on the conversation of, you know, how do we look at homework? How do we look at assessments? How do we look at personalized learning? And those topics of, can we diversify the way that students can demonstrate that content knowledge? And what I won't click on all of these buttons, but the information that we have, I asked each of the department heads to share, what are you doing within your departments, you know, to show us that you are addressing the unfinished learning, and how are we improving those student outcomes? And it's from having structured lessons, using the Socratic dialogue, and talking about reflecting in those project-based learning activities that are happening in science class, to the group work that is happening in world language when they reflect on the different cultures and experiences that are happening within the classroom. And for a school-wide initiative or district-wide initiative, we're also looking at those restorative justice practices. Myself and Vice Principal Brian McEnaugh have had all 3 tiers of training, and Ben Kelly is starting the training. And the staff is meeting with the Dean of Schechtiner tomorrow after school to talk about the restorative justice and how that will help teachers within the classroom, and looking at how we can do classroom management and empower students to be part of more conversations. So these are things that we're doing. These are initiatives that we're taking at the high school to diversify how students can learn, how we change what's happening in the classroom. And all of this that we continue to do and will continue to do and will continue to improve upon and constantly reflect, allow us then to have some great results. And I just want to backtrack for 1 second. I forgot about this one slide, the intervention strategies as well. For the past 2 years, we've really reflected on how we can support our students, and we have improved upon some of the methods that we've done to support our students, and there's things that we're still reflecting on. Case coordination, Jenny Beliveau oversees the case coordination for the counselors, the nurse, and school administration on students that we feel are at risk. We have the SST process, student support team process, where Caroline Mannion, who's a behavioralist at the high school, works with teachers to say, okay, this is what the student needs in order to find success in the classroom. We have the Bright program, which we had started last year for students who have been out of school for extended periods of time due to medical reasons or hospitalizations or school anxiety. And the Compass program, which is a special ed program that was put into place this year, similar profile from a Bright student, but really socially, emotionally documented IEPs that who need that additional support. We have math support in place to really focus on those students who, if you think back to the beginning of the presentation, need that additional support for that unfinished learning, or they need that additional support in that Course 1 math class as they prepare to do MCAS again in 10th grade. And the biology support for freshman students who, again, struggled being identified from 8th to 9th grade, who are taking the biology MCAS at the end of this year for their 9th grade experience. So those are things that we're putting into place. And I think at the next school committee meeting, we'll also be discussing the youth risk behavior survey, which is something also that DESE asks school districts to do, which allows us to reflect upon how students are telling us they're feeling. It's an anonymous survey where students will be giving us feedback on how they're doing and what they need from us in order to really be successful. And then at the end of the day, some really great news that I'd like to share with everybody. Our current class of 2022, the information I'm sharing here, I have to say, no student is committing to a school until May 1st. So this is, I'm talking about acceptances right now. I'm not talking about where students are going to. So as I say this, to date, we have sent almost 2,200 transcripts to colleges. So think about, we have 279 seniors. we have 226 seniors who have already applied to college. 53 seniors are still, they're doing the regular admission process, which is February, which is March, which is rolling. So they haven't done that yet. But almost 2,200 transcripts have been sent to schools. And I just thought this information would be interesting to look at. The top 3 schools at this time that Milton High School students have applied to: UMass Amherst, Northeastern, and BU. The top 3 acceptances to date, and again, I don't mean that they're committing to going there, but for Milton High School students, UMass Amherst, Bridgewater State, and Loyola Chicago. So those are the top numbers when we're able to run reports in what we call Naviance, which is the tool that we use. Other acceptances to date, we have Amherst, Barnard, Bentley. We have Catholic University, Columbia, Hampton, Providence, Spelman, URI. And I'm actually going to ask Baron Clancy if he's comfortable enough, and I'm putting him on the spot, and he didn't know I was doing this. But as a senior, Baron Clancy, do you want to share with everybody where you're going to school? Do you know yet?
I do know. I went to Brown.
Say it one more time. You went in and out.
Brown University.
So Baron Clancy is the reason I put Brown on the screen, and I just want to give him a shout out. Well-rounded student, very involved in his academics, very involved in extracurricular. We have a very strong senior class, and I think the students, not just the students in our senior class, but our students have truly taken advantage of everything that Milton High School has to offer. And when we look at the vision of a graduate, the 5 steps that we've gone through this evening, I truly believe the students have that opportunity to academically find what's interesting to them and be invested, and find those extracurriculars, whether it's sports or theater or the clubs that are interesting to them, and be invested in what they want to do. And if we don't have it, I think this year maybe we've had 3 or 4 more suggestions for clubs. That students like, hey, I don't see this. Can we get this up and running? And that's what we're doing, because it's what the students want. And the staff has just been phenomenal in supporting these initiatives that the students are doing, because you need staff in order to run these. And just to close it out, we've had 4 seniors commit to Division I schools for cross-country, baseball, and crew. So these are the great things that are happening at Milton High School. And, as I said at the beginning, it is all reflective of our school improvement plan. And when you look at the school improvement plan, which I also know you have in front of you, there are items that are highlighted in pink. And those ones are action steps that we have made significant progress towards. We're not done. We're constantly reflecting on them. But there are things that in the school improvement plan, we are making progress towards. There's other things we are still working on. But I appreciate the time you've afforded us this evening to present to you. And if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. But I'm going to get out of the sharing the screen and go back, if that's okay with everyone. So thank you for your time.
Any questions for any of the members of the Milton High School Site Council? Member Ross Denny.
First, I want to thank you all for coming tonight and sharing the wonderful work that's happening at the high school. I have a sophomore, and he has immensely benefited from some of you individually, as well as the clubs and activities that have been made available to him, as well as his friends. I have 2 questions, essentially. One is around the interventions. As you mentioned, unfinished learning is something that is plaguing everyone across the state. And you talked about a series of interventions, and I'd love to hear a couple of them in terms of specific examples and how we're assessing whether or not kids are growing or learning from these interventions, ultimately the impact.
Sure. So Brian Seelig recently has implemented iReady. I know we've talked about that in some other schools in the district. And the iReady, we're using it in the math curriculum for students just to see where those gaps in learning are. And then we're taking that information and using it in the math support classes and some of the math classes as well to make sure we're filling in that time with the students. When we're recommending students for I'm going to say the math support or the biology support, we're not just putting a student into the class. We're having that conversation with home and with the students prior to making that schedule change, so they know why we're making those schedule changes. It's not just we're going to do this. The students and the families need to be part of that conversation. And some of the other intervention strategies that I was mentioning also, I want to talk about the academic strategies. So the academic strategies is a course that it is not a special ed course, but it was something we did this year also in conjunction with our Bright program. So for students who have been identified as struggling, and I'm talking about just over just the past 2 years, there are students who are struggling to stay organized because it's just too much lately. So the students in this program are given checklists and organizational, as simple for some of us that might sound. You know, someone is checking in with them at the beginning of the day, during advisory, and throughout the day to make sure they're following their schedule and they're able to log into the Google Classroom, and that the teacher for academic strategies is communicating with the 6 other teachers that student has, just to make sure the work is getting done. Or if that student's having a hard time, how are we supporting that student? Do they need to go see, to the Take 5 room for a little while that, was in the adjustment counselor's office? Or do we need to look at the work that they're doing and say, okay, let's see how we can modify some of that work to make sure that we're not overwhelming them right now. So those are 2 of the strategies that we have been using. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
No, it's immensely helpful because it's interesting. A few years back, as part of Parent University, there was a consultant that was brought in around executive function, and how much challenge you can mitigate just by helping students develop those skills. And my second-ish question was related to something that Assistant Principal Kelly had presented when we had the student data. We were talking about how do we get African American and Hispanic students more enrolled in AP classes. And you just mentioned the guidance counselors are going in. Is that the specific way that we want to try to encourage greater enrollment? I recognize there's this tension between what are students comfortable with and how do you push them beyond their comfort zone with supports. So I'd love to hear about that, as well as I noticed in the new program of studies, the SAT course is back. So I just want to make sure, have you been able to identify a resource to teach that? Because that was one of the challenges that Assistant Principal Kelly had shared.
So let me focus on the first part of your question, the AP part of it. So after PSATs are given to 10th and 11th graders, the College Board provides us information called AP Potential. And so that information will be shared with the teachers as well. So it might say Beverly Ross Denny took the PSATs, if I can use your name. And, these are the types of AP courses that Beverly Ross might find a lot of success in. So the teachers will be provided that information as well. So while the guidance counselors are going into those, I'm saying the history classes and talking about the overall courses that are offered. Now, myself as the history teacher, I'm going to be talking about, APUSH, which is AP US history, or I'm talking about AP European history, or, those types of classes. And if I see you and I'm going to say, okay, but look, those PSAT scores really show that you're somebody who can definitely benefit from doing well in this class. I really want you to take that class. So those are the conversations that are happening also. So those are some of the skills those are some of the things that we'll be doing. The teachers will be having the conversations, counselors will be having the conversations. Those recommendations will be going home as they do every year. And then part of that is also students can also follow up with the teachers, families can follow up and say, why did you make this recommendation? This is what we're thinking, and open up that conversation, because it's when those conversations happen that we're really seeing what the students' interests are beyond of just what they're saying, this is what I want to do. In the SAT prep course, I did note that is pending funding, that we get more teachers. So we're hoping, but again, that is something that is really dependent on funding, because that is a course that we have run during the school day or on weekends, which is a separate way that it was run, but that is dependent on additional staffing. So
thank you so much.
No problem.
Member White.
Thank you for this really excellent presentation, and I loved hearing from the students especially, and I like the incorporation of student voice in their education, and the breakfast with the principal I know you started that last Friday. Thank you for all that you do for our students. And I'm just wondering, Karen, if you could speak to how you are supporting your staff during these last tough years with the demands on all of the staff at the Milton High School, as well as the other schools too. The staff is amazing at Milton High School. I feel like they're supporting me more than I feel that I can support them. I really do. What I try to make a few laps of the building every day, to be honest with you, pop into classrooms when I can, listening to what the staff have to say. I think for the staff, the PTO has been fantastic in providing treats a few different times this year. They most recently did one, and this might sound silly, but it was snacks in the teacher's room, and they're old school snacks. So for all of the adults on this call, you look at some of those snacks and you just brings back those childhood memories, those yodels and those Hostess cupcakes. So
it was really great, you know, that the PTO has been really supportive and awesome. And for me, it's more about little recognitions here and there. You know, you can say thank you all you want, but it's in the actions, I think. So for me, it's walking around the building, and at the holiday time, I did a little fundraiser with all of the staff, and probably 3/4 of the staff got involved. And it was just a simple task of guessing how many Hershey Kisses were in a container. And I made some donations to some local charities on teachers' behalf on who made the best guess. And, you know, I think staff was really pulled into that. And those are the team building things, are the things that I think really make a difference for the staff. And just recognizing with the staff that, you know, sometimes they need that time off. And we just have to be mindful of that. And if anybody's on this call right now and you want to be a building sub, please, you know, there are days that are just hard. And we recognize that. I hope people recognize our staff really, they are doing an amazing job day in and day out. And these past 2 years have just put more on their plate, and they really are phenomenal people. So thank you.
Dr. Carroll, if you would yield your time for 1 second and let high school student Cora, would you go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I just have one question, and I know you were talking about like social emotional learning, and I know from personal experience that the social and emotional part really does tie into the academic part. And so I know also from personal experience that like anxiety around COVID can also really tie into that. And so I'm just wondering how you're like systematically dealing with that and supporting students.
Cora, that's a great question. You know, I think over the past year and a half, we've said it if we haven't said it once, we've said it many times. If a student doesn't feel safe and supported, then that learning isn't going to happen, right? So, you know, the students that were remote, they were remote for a reason, and they stayed remote for a reason. And you know, we held principal hours last year, and I went to some students' houses to check in on them, as did Jenny Beliveau and our other counselors, just to touch base with students. And we have to continue to be reflective and listen to what the students are saying. And that's one of the reasons why I started this. You know, I did the breakfast. It was recommended that the next one I do is a lunch and maybe get pizza. So I said, okay, but it's really important to listen to the students. And that's why, as members of my DEI committee, the students on the DEI have said, Mrs. Kale, we really need to incorporate more student voice into what we're doing. And so that's why we're going to hopefully once a month or once a term do these times to really listen to what students have to say. And for me, there are students, Cora, that have come by my office and said, Mrs. Kale, I'm really just feeling unsettled today. I don't feel like I can go to class. And so we say, what can we do to support you? You know, do you need to stay in my office and just get some work done, or go to the Take 5 room? Who can I connect you with? Who do you feel safe with talking in this building? And those are the connections we make sure that the students have in the building. And for some students, that's still something we have to work on. But I'm hoping, you know, as the year goes on, everybody's able to identify somebody. And know that they always have someone in that building to go to. So thank you, Cora.
Yes, thank you, Cora. Dr. Carroll.
Thank you, Mrs. Cahill, and thank you all so much for the presentation and everything you're doing. And thank you, Cora, for that question. It prompted you, Mrs. Cahill, to actually speak to one of the questions I wanted to ask, which is sort of like about the kinds of things you're hearing from students when you have these opportunities to hear their voices. So thank you for sharing some of those things. I have just, I guess, a question and then an observation. So maybe I'll just make the observation first and then ask the question. And I'm glad to see the action step in this school improvement plan around establishing the building-based professional development committee.
Right.
That seems like a really important and great step, especially considering the proposal for additional professional development time for next year, to make sure that that feels planned out in the way that will best meet the needs that you've identified and that your faculty is identifying that they have. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that out of all of the things that you've been able to share with us. And then one other thing I just noticed was right above that, reduce class size. And you had spoken to this when you pointed out that the SAT prep class is budget dependent, and just noting that goal of reducing class size and increasing elective offerings to create conditions for personalized learning, that does hinge on our staffing and what we've proposed to the budget. And I know we'll be hearing more about that later, but just for community members watching to like really understand that those are connections and consequences of the budget actually sort of create or remove opportunities for our students. And then, sorry, that's Julia. The question I had, because I have younger kids, I'm still learning about the high school. I was wondering if you could just provide me and anyone else who doesn't know, Julia, I'll be right with you, I'm sorry. A little bit of background on the mission and vision of a graduate, and how was that formulated? Like, when was that put into place, and what was the process for kind of coming up with those particular, the language that identifies the mission of Milton High School, that vision of a graduate? I see the action step of, you know, aligning to that, and you shared in detail many of the things you're doing, and that you're sharing, you know, promoting and sharing that in the community. But just curious about kind of how that was came to be.
How we got there, right? Sure. And no problem, Julia. You can talk to Mom. It's okay. So I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation our NEASC accreditation visit, and that is something that when I was first in the guidance office, when I had first come up to the high school, we were actually in the middle of an accreditation review, and at that point in time, we wrote at that point in time a mission statement for Milton High School and steps that we expect all students to achieve before they graduate from high school. So with our most recent visit, when we knew they were coming in the fall, there's a reflection time, there's a collaborative time that the building works together. And okay, what are we going to show the accreditation committee, that the work that we're doing here, and what do we expect our students to know? So we took those things that we thought students needed to learn, so I'm talking about several years ago, and we made them into 5 steps of what do we think every student needs before they graduate from high school. And it had to incorporate for us being a good citizen and incorporating technology and understanding the curriculum that they are taking, right? That makes work for them. And then as NEASC came in and worked with us, and NEASC, again, last fall, they visited some classrooms, they interviewed students, they interviewed staff members, myself, central office, department heads, and they worked with us to make sure that our 5 key steps of a vision of a graduate are in line with what the state accreditation is looking for when a student graduates from high school. And when you look at the new, I don't believe it's been approved yet, but the district strategic plan and what their goal is, you'll see that our vision of a graduate really ties in with the strategic plan, that we're just making sure our students are students who are capable to succeed in a post-secondary plan after high school in a manner, and we're giving them the skills, whether that is, you know, a 4-year college or a 2-year college or whatever their plan is, that they have the skills to find that success in a path that we have provided and worked with them to get on. And that they also recognize when they leave Milton, because there is a life beyond Milton, that they're able to find that success, whether it's in Milton or Massachusetts or somewhere in Europe, because that's what our students do. The stories when students come back and they tell us about their life experiences, I have to say, I feel our students are very much more exposed to a lot of great experiences here. And those 5 steps in a vision of a graduate allow them to do that. And they are so much more prepared, I truly feel, than so many other students when they come back and they talk to me about their experiences. So I hope that helps answer your question.
Member Rosemary.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all so much for this wonderful presentation, and congratulations to Mr. Clancy on his acceptance at Brown. It's very exciting, and it's an exciting year for all our seniors, and we watch with great hope and excitement for them in the future. It's exciting to hear from my perch the alignment of the high school's plans with the strategic plan, and that's one of the goals of the strategic planning committee is to have our our goals aligned with efforts throughout the district. And as you know, as you mentioned, the strategic plan is evolving and will be revised soon. Actually, we'll be doing a presentation at our next school committee meeting. But I really appreciate your efforts to align what you're doing at the high school with that. And that being said, one of the goals that you were talking about that Mr. Kelly addressed around facilities, that is another area that I'm involved with. And that clearly our growth of an enrollment has made its way up to the high school, and you're feeling the pinch there in the same way or similar to what we're seeing at our other elementary and middle schools. And we want to be able to support you in your efforts to identify spaces that might need to be moved around or converted to become useful for classroom space or however you decide. But keep us in mind as the next year comes in terms of budgetary needs that you might have for space conversions. Every year we have some money that goes into our capital request for doing conversions, and we've been doing a fair number of those over the years. Yes, stay tuned to our next presentation with the school building committee, because we will be talking a little bit about the high school there too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Aberhart.
Yes, thank you, Superintendent Jett, and thank you, Principal Cahill and the high school team and students for an excellent presentation. I really wish that I had your presentation last week when we went to the warrant committee. They asked us a lot of questions about tying our quest to outcomes and about whether or not we were inspiring our students to be excellent citizens and lifelong learners and thinkers. And your presentation tonight captured perfectly all the things they questioned and quizzed us about last week. So I want to thank you so much. We will be sure to share this presentation with the warrant committee so they can understand how we tie outcomes to our budget, and that we have the most inspired, most fantastic, most wonderful students, families, and educators that a community could ask for. So thank you for inspiring us all and for coming tonight and showing the community as a whole that we are indeed an excellent, top-notch, wonderful school district.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Aberhart. At this point in time, if there's no more questions, I'm just going to ask Principal Cahill if she'll stay on, as just in the event, if you guys have any questions regarding the Milton High School Program of Studies, which I believe you guys need to take a vote this evening. But if you have any questions, maybe the high school team could stay on for a couple of minutes. Otherwise, if there's no questions, I would strongly suggest, urge, and encourage you guys to make a vote.
We have to deal with the articulation agreement before we do that.
Okay, thank you. Then high school, is that okay to move on then, Dr. Craighead?
I would say that's up to the chair, but I just wanted to.
Wait, you lost me. I'm so sorry, Dr.
No, that's okay. Didn't we have to vote on the articulation agreement with Quincy College before?
Yes, we have to vote on
enrollment.
the dual enrollment. Yes. So before we approve the program of study, that's the first thing we have to do. Yes, that's correct.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but could I ask Kiara and John if they can be dismissed, because they might have homework to do.
Yes.
Jenny Beliveau and Jay Troy, thank you so much, everyone, for joining this evening. I'll stay on the call.
Thank you, kids. Have a great night. Good luck with your homework. All right, yes, so Superintendent Jett and school committee, before we approve the Milton High School Program of Studies, we do need to approve the Milton High School's participation in the dual enrollment program at Quincy College. If you recall, we've had 2 or 3 presentations on that. We decided that we were going to make a vote this evening on that. So Dr. Craighead,
I just have a few things to say about that, and I will try not to take up too much time. I've done a lot of thinking about this. I recognize the potential benefits for students in Milton Public Schools, but I also recognize at least one major drawback. According to the Patriot Ledger in an article written last year, quote, from several rumor-wrecked presidencies to questionable spending practices, the collapse of its nursing program and dramatic fluctuations in enrollment, the road has been incredibly rocky for, unquote, Quincy College. So in the 2 to 3 years following the loss of accreditation for its nursing program in 2018, a new president was appointed in 2019, and another new president was appointed last year. Quincy College is also experiencing a huge dip in enrollment. So I want to start there. That's not something that's just particular to Quincy College. It's particular to lots of schools across the Commonwealth and across the country. But specifically to community colleges, they're experiencing a deeper dive in enrollment than in other colleges. The articulation agreement with Milton Public Schools would benefit Quincy College in at least a couple of ways. One is that it would add to its FTEs for students, that is full-time equivalency, so that for every student who was taking a 3-credit course or the statistics class we're talking about, if you add 4 of those up, and it's a full-time equivalency for the school. Secondly, it would serve as a potential recruitment tool for Quincy College for any Milton Public Schools student who might want to attend the school post-graduation. In fact, the president of Quincy College has said that stopping the decline in enrollment is a top priority. Financially, it certainly benefits Quincy College in that each semester, Quincy College will receive, if the class of statistics hits, let's say 25 students, that would be $7,500 that semester for Quincy College. And this would go on semester after semester, potentially year after year, unless we stop the articulation agreement. Our teachers, Milton Public School teachers, are the ones who will be doing the instructing. Milton Public Schools will be paying those teachers, will be paying for their benefits. We will be footing the bill for the facilities, for the technology, for the utilities costs, all of the overhead. What we get from Quincy College, it seems to me, is a syllabus, maybe some training, and not a whole lot more than that. With Milton Public Schools is my third point. With Milton Public Schools on their list of schools with whom Quincy College has articulation agreements, that helps with their rebranding. It helps with any future articulation agreement prospects that they might have to have Milton Public Schools on their list. I want to make sure that I've covered, the only community college in the state that operates outside of the Massachusetts Association of Community Colleges is Quincy College. It doesn't belong to that 15 college consortium, although it could join. So it's not a part of the same initiatives or guidelines handed down by the state. And I think that's important to keep in mind as well. So though it's very clear to me that Quincy College would benefit in quite a number of ways for having this articulation agreement with Milton Public Schools, it will not agree to fund even one scholarship for one Milton Public School student who is in need and cannot afford the tuition. So for me, I cannot in good conscience vote in favor of the agreement. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Dr. Craighead, for sharing your thoughts and opinions. I think we would need to make a motion to approve the dual enrollment and then continue on with the discussion, or second it or not. I don't know where we are with the rest. I don't know if someone else wanted to share their thoughts or had a response to what Dr. Craig had just said. Member Ross-Denny?
So the good thing is Quincy College isn't the only college in the Commonwealth that offers this. Is it possible to include dual enrollment as an option without naming the college?
Dr. Craighead, do you have something to add to that, or Dr. Carroll?
I can speak to this simply because I'm on the other side of it. Dual enrollment is an option and free for community colleges. Dual enrollment is an option for anyone attending high school in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for one of those 15 community colleges I just named that are in that consortium. There are some guidelines. One is that you have to have a minimum of a 2.5 GPA, but you get to take the course for free. You do have to apply, but it's free. The drawback, and I'll admit this frankly, is that you don't get to take it in a classroom during your high school day with the rest of your classmates. That's the benefit of this, is that it's just a normal part. But you would get, high school credit and college credit at the same time during your school day.
So my previous employer, Fitchburg State, was our supplier of college credit, and our instructors delivered the instruction. That's why I was mentioning over the summer that I'd seen contracts like this before. So it is possible to do it outside of the classroom. I just don't know if it applies to high school students, because one of the things that Brian said that I appreciated was, it'd be great if we had this opportunity for fall 2022, but I wouldn't want the potential baggage associated with specifying one college partner to prohibit us from adding this to the course of studies and then buying us time to get into an agreement. It doesn't take that long to negotiate these types of agreements, because most of these schools, to your point, at least Fitchburg State had a standard agreement. It was something that you could tweak, but there was some sort of standard agreement. But I don't, if we can avoid delaying the fall start by including it in the course of the program of studies without naming a college, is where I'm hoping we could go. That's why I asked. If you know that, Elaine, Dr. Craighead, it'd be great to know.
I don't know the answer to that question, whether we could just put that in that language is.
Karen, Principal Cahill or Assistant Principal Kelly? It's okay to say you don't know, because I actually don't know.
I don't know. I thought you would have to have an agreement with an institution. I'm not aware of it any other way.
Well, I think it's worth, put it this way, until someone tells us otherwise, which I'm sure someone will, it might be worth voting on a program of studies without naming a site, because I think it's worth putting it in. I don't want to delay the vote on the program of studies, because I understand the downstream impact on your timeline for getting students enrolled. And that I know Brian Selig is very busy. For those who don't know, he's the math director. If he is willing to identify another partner, maybe one of the other colleges and universities that Dr. Craighead had mentioned, there may be an opportunity in the next, several months to secure an alternative agreement.
I saw Dr. Carroll's hand and Member Rosmarin's hand.
So one question about one of the points that you raised, Dr. Craighead, involving the tuition and the fact this has been raised several times, that I guess wishing that there would be some flexibility or opportunity for scholarship for students. But I recall that in our last discussion of this, even though we weren't getting that assurance from Quincy College, we had decided, I'm asking if my recollection is correct, that we had just sort of determined together that if we moved forward with this, even if it wouldn't be from Quincy College, that we would find a way. I recall you saying something to this effect, Principal Cahill, that a student would not miss out on the opportunity to gain the credits for lack of financial resources, that we would figure out a way to make sure they had the opportunity to gain the credits. I remember, that topic of MFE had come up, but we hadn't, I don't know if we had pursued actually learning if there were. So I guess I'm just wondering where that stands. Is that still a sort of general commitment that we feel we could make, even if we don't have the specifics worked out necessarily where that funding? I know you had done the research to learn that actually the majority of the students who had said they would want to take the class would be able to pay for the credits that you had polled to the students. But is that, am I remembering that correctly, that we sort of committed that we would make sure we could find those resources for students, at least for next year?
Yes, you are remembering correctly. And we
Okay.
discussed the way that the students qualify for financial aid in the district, in other ways for courses or as AP exams, and that we would
Okay.
use those parameters in order to determine that support. And we
that
had
would be
data
covered.
we would have
Okay.
we had the data from the work that that Mr. Selig had done. And
Okay.
Mr. Kelly as well.
I know, by the way, though, that doesn't address your concern, Dr. Craighead, about the lack of reciprocity from Quincy College, which you were persuasive in raising that, but thank you for clarifying.
Member Rosmarin?
Well, this is an interesting moment. I kind of came into the meeting thinking that I would support this dual enrollment program if we did it and considered it as a pilot to see how it worked. However, Dr. Craighead's comments are compelling and give me pause for that, just in terms of the ability of Quincy College to follow through. But the other thing I'm wondering about, just in terms of this option of just listing in our program of studies a dual enrollment course that with an institution still to be named, you're looking to open this up for students to enroll in courses very soon, right? That you need definites for kids to decide to sign up for. And I don't know that having an unknown opportunity available is going to generate interest enough for students to sign up. So I guess I'm wondering whether we need to go back to the drawing board and look at our other options.
Member Rostini? Thank you, Member Rosmarin.
Well, I think the SAT course is in the program of studies right now, at least from the version that I looked at maybe last week. And there's not a resource identified for that. As a matter of fact, it's funding contingent. So at least from the perspective of including it, as a freshman, there were lots of courses my son couldn't take because of COVID. But the staff at Milton High School was able to, they placed kids in other classes, and at the high school information night, they say, you may not even get the elective you requested because it might be oversubscribed. So I don't think it's not for lack of precedence to include something that may not ultimately be offered. But I think, to Dr. Craighead's point, and from my professional experience, there really are other colleges in the Commonwealth that offer this. And The pricing is very inexpensive. It's just a matter of, what is our capacity to do that outreach now, given all the other responsibilities that the staff at Milton High School are juggling.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to share a few thoughts. We've had this conversation multiple times, and I want to thank you all for sharing your thoughts, and Dr. Craighead for sharing her perspective, particularly since this is the field in which she works as a professor and educator. A couple of things. I'm thinking about the fact that the students, when they were surveyed and were asked about this, and while I recognize that students don't think the way we think, we're very much disappointed that they didn't have the opportunity to have this opportunity this year. And they were looking forward to perhaps students having that opportunity in the future. I recognize that Quincy has had some challenges, as Dr. Craig had just shared with us. And so perhaps their goal is to become, to improve their enrollment and to improve their community engagement. I don't know, I haven't had those conversations with them. I also think we've talked a lot about equity in terms of all opportunities for all students, right? Across the board. And this is an opportunity to do that for all students, right? To engage in college work while they're still in high school, an opportunity to do so while they don't have to go anywhere, and they can do it in their own place in their own time. So from my perspective, I don't know, Principal Cahill, perhaps you can remind me for how long the agreement would be for?
It would be something we would renew or review every year.
Review or review every year.
Yes.
Great. And I do think that it provides an opportunity. I don't know, I think that Principal Cahill had also mentioned another college when she came to us the first time, but students would be expected to go there. And so I don't know what other opportunities we had, or if we do this for 1 year and we review it at another year. I think we've had lots of discussions about this. We can make a motion to approve the Milton High School's partnership with Quincy College for dual enrollment program, if someone would second it, and we can take a vote. And if it goes down, then it goes down. Superintendent Jett?
Yes, I did wanted to just reemphasize it is year to year. There's no financial commitment on the part of any individual until March of 2023. I think that I shared that with you folks in the email. And I do believe that there was some conversation about Curry in addition to going to Curry. If I'm not mistaken, I think the price was a little bit higher than what Quincy College had offered. And I only share that to make sure that it's elevated prior to you making a vote. And however you vote, we fully understand it. And Dr. Craig had raised some great questions or concerns. So I would leave that up to the school committee members at this point in time.
Yes, Member Rosteni, please.
This is my last question, and I get it's an up or down vote just to make it past this point. If we vote yes, is there still an opportunity for us to identify other colleges in the meantime? It doesn't have to be exclusive. And as I said, I have hundreds of college credits delivered with not one person stepping foot on Fitchburg State's campus. So I know it's possible.
Okay, great, good to know.
No, I mean,
Yes.
would we consider looking is essentially the question to Principal Cahill or Superintendent Jett. Is the door closed for now?
I feel at this point we are going into the course selection process for next year. So for this year, I think we have to stick with what we know, and then we can do research further on the other institutions, and any feedback that you can provide us for other institutions would be very helpful. So we can possibly build upon a dual enrollment program, for years to come. But in order to go ahead with scheduling for next year, as crazy as it seems, we have to start the process sooner than later, so students can review the program of studies, have those conversations with teachers. We do the review. So for now, we just need to work on on Quincy, whether it's a yes or a no, and then we can always do more reflection and visit other options for the following year. I guess that's how we have to look at it right now.
So you're thinking for school year, not the fall of 2022, but the fall of 2023.
just so we would see what's available in other schools and the accessibility that students would have to those institutions as well, because some of them are going to campus. So how are students going to get there? So that's research we'd like to do with our students to see what's accessible for them.
Right.
So, yes.
Right. Anyone else want to weigh in here on the, we haven't even made a motion. We're still having a conversation. Are you all not comfortable even making a vote on this conversation this evening? I do think we have to make a vote so that we can or cannot put it in the program of study.
Well, I think we have a motion on the floor and I would second
Yeah,
it.
it hasn't been seconded though.
Yeah, I would second it.
Okay, thank you, Member Rosemary. So any further discussion about that?
Just one clarifying question following on Member Ross Denny's last question or point. If we vote to approve the agreement this evening with Quincy College, then we are in that agreement, right? So we
haven't signed anything yet. We just
right, but if we vote to do that tonight, then that means we're signing that agreement. Is that what that means?
For this year.
For this coming school year. Okay.
Anyone else want to weigh in? No? Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I can start with myself for a vote if that makes everyone feel comfortable. And I say yes. Member Rosemary?
I'm going to say yes.
Member White?
Yes.
Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Dr. Craighead?
No.
Okay. And Dr. Carroll? You can always
I
abstain.
have reservations, but I'm going to vote yes.
Okay. All right. So I think that was 5-1. All right. Thank you. I would like to follow up with Principal Cahill and Superintendent Jett on Member Ross Denny's comments about Fitchburg. I too have taken courses from them as a grown-up. And I do think that's an important thing to think about. Thank you, Dr. Craighead, and everyone for your conversation tonight. It was very helpful. All right. So that moves us to the, Superintendent Jett, this is your report.
Yeah, so very quickly, I want to give you guys a quick update on COVID as we all know.
Wait, Superintendent Jett, we have to vote the program of study. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I just didn't want to take over your report. All right, we do have there is a motion on the table to approve the Milton High School program of studies for the 2022-2023 school year.
Second.
I need a second, and now we can have a discussion. Okay. Anyone have any questions about the new courses that were provided in the program of study? Anything at all at this moment? All right, so the motion has been made and seconded. This will be a roll call vote. Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Dr. Craighead?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, abstain. Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
Okay, Member Rosemary?
Yes.
Member White?
Yes.
And Member Eberhardt, yes. So that would be 5-0-1. Do I have that right? Do I have that right? Okay, great. All right, thank you. Thank you to the high school team for your presentation this evening. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you all for your time and consideration. And school committee member, Dr. Craighead, I very much hear your concerns. We'll pay very, very close attention to what's happening with Quincy College and would like to form relationships with other colleges as well. So thank you truly everyone for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Principal Cahill.
Thank you.
Right now, Superintendent, go ahead.
Yeah, so looking at the time, I'll try to be as quick as possible. I just wanted to give folks an update on the new testing program. As many of you know, we had the deadline of January 24th to submit an application for the new testing option provided by the state. As of last week, we had 300 faculty and staff that received their at-home rapid antigen test. And today, probably because of the snowstorm this weekend, the mail probably didn't get out on Monday. We just received the student test kits today, which we were hoping to have them yesterday to distribute them today, but we don't. Kim Coughlin, some of the nurses, the custodian staff worked, counted out, separated it. All nurses have the information and they're delivered to the schools. So our students will be bringing home those test kits, and we have about 1,400 students. in Milton Public Schools that will be carrying home their test kits in their backpacks or on their person. And I just say publicly, we're asking students to make sure that they do take these home and don't open them, and they administer these tests in the presence of a parent or a guardian. So I wanted to share that. The other thing I wanted to share is that our numbers have gone down gradually, even though they seem high compared to last year. This week, we reported earlier today for the last week, 9 staff members positive and 58 students. And then if you look back to last year, that was a significant, these numbers today are significantly higher, but I am very optimistic with more people who are vaccinated, boosted, still wearing masks, but also you're seeing a rapid decline, not only in the town of Milton, but you're seeing it in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the nation as a whole. We're getting closer and closer to whether, we could call it an endemic, or we're getting closer and closer to herd immunity, whatever you want to call it. But we're looking for it. I do want to let the school committee know. I did submit a waiver. You could submit a waiver for mask optional, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you implement it, but we wanted to get it in. And I'll tell you why, because the deadline is for the mask mandate is the 28th of this month. And we want to be prepared in the event that when we walk away for vacation, we may get an announcement on that Friday during the vacation, and we just wanted to make sure that we have everything. And if things continue to go in the right direction, we will have a conversation with the school committee members, because it is a school committee mandate as well. So I just wanted to let you know, many districts have applied for it. I believe that you guys indirectly heard this. Many districts applied for it, but have not enacted it because of the high numbers, or they did, and some reverted back because of high numbers in their district. So we always have that option. But I just wanted to give you that quick update. And then finally, the mobile vaccine unit. We will have the mobile vaccine unit on March 5th, as it stands right now, with a follow-up date of March 26th. One session, the first session on March 5th right now, as it stands right now, will be at Milton High School. And then on the 26th, the follow-up would be at the Pierce Middle School, hopefully. We're still trying to work out those locations because of rentals and the van, but that's how quickly we could get that. So that is a quick report on COVID, and I wanted to see if you guys have any questions.
I think Dr. Carroll has a question, Superintendent.
Thank you. Mr. Jett, can you just confirm which school or schools did you apply for a waiver? And can you just confirm the updated vaccination rates at those schools?
Yes, so the updated vaccination, first of all, I applied for it for middle and high school. I don't think you see too many elementary schools that are at that level, the threshold. And that is because we have been, I think I reported it to the last 2 school meetings, that we're well over 80% at the high school and the middle school, and we're over 96%, close to 97, maybe even 98 now, with our faculty and staff at district-wide, but in particular at the middle school and high school, we're well over the 80%. I did not get the numbers, and I think people could understand why. We have the nurses that are already taxed. They were learning the new system, calculating all that stuff, and they have to go into the system to try to identify those students who are identified. Our nursing staff have not done that yet. However, Kim is now, with this new testing option already in motion, she has assured me that I would have that information by the next school committee meeting at the elementary level. So I do not have that right now because some parents have submitted it. Some parents have said it, but we need proof that there's a vaccination. And so now it's really about the checks and balance, particularly at the elementary level. Member Ross Denny? Oh, I'm sorry, it looked like your hand's up. Sorry, that was my curse.
Thank you, Superintendent Jett. I know parents are anxious for us to return to the world that we used to live in 2019. And some parents have reached out to us and asked us about the masks and the waiver. So thank you for updating on us that this evening. And we're moving in the right direction. So we're hopeful for the time to come.
Thank you.
All right, Member Rosemarin, you're up. So sorry.
Thank you. We're coming back with the school building committee report and update, and I'd like to welcome Sean O'Rourke, who is the chair of the school building committee, to make a brief presentation.
Good evening. This is now my third time in front of you guys, and I want to thank you for the audience tonight. So if I may, I'm just going to share my screen. And just let me know if it came through, okay?
It did.
Excellent. So as most of you are aware, our committee is made up of nine members. Member Rosemarin and Member White from your committee are appointed by you guys to the school building committee. Mike Zulis and Glenn Hoffman were appointed by the select board. And the remaining 5 of us at the top are a mixture of engineers and construction management people that were appointed by the town moderator. And we were formed in 2019, and we're trying to bring you up to speed kind of as we're making goals or milestones along the path. So the thing that we wanted to kind of touch on or get some input or feedback from your committee tonight is a follow-on from my previous presentation. So as everyone's aware, this is the current grade configurations of the district. And prior to last summer, our committee was looking at building a 5th elementary school that would house pre-K to 5th grade. As we studied that, we were looking at implications mainly of redistricting, and then further, the kind of propagation of the larger class sizes at elementary school getting up to the middle school. So with this option, when we looked at it, it really wasn't addressing the middle school. So the option that we presented at my last meeting was the construction of essentially a second middle school at a site that's a campus environment, as I'm calling it, at the high school. That new middle school or upper middle school would house the 7th and 8th grades along with the pre-K. And essentially what we'd be doing is the Pierce Middle School would get reused. We would be stripping 1 grade out of that and moving the 5th grade up from the elementary schools. So what this does is by removing the pre-K out of the elementary schools and also the 5th grade, we free up existing space at the schools. We don't need to redistrict. And then it essentially solves the problem at the elementary level and then also at the middle school level. When we looked at it and compared both of them, both options address the long-term needs of the district. And this slide that you're looking at here is actually copied from the 2019 study that your committee hired DRA architects to look at. And they came up with basically a shortage of roughly 26 rooms, mainly 16 classrooms. So what we're trying to do is, lay out what the differences are between them. So, we have our current configuration of the classes or the district on the left. Option 1, as we're calling it, is essentially that new elementary school. It would basically add a new building at the elementary level that would have 26 classrooms and pre-K, 2 pre-K rooms. There'd be no changes at the middle school, no changes at the high school. Option 2, which was the one I just discussed too, would leave the elementary schools still with 4 schools, but change the grade configurations of that by moving the pre-K and the 5th grade out. At the middle school level for infrastructure or facilities, you'd see a new school, which is the one I'll touch on in a minute. Also at that new school, we'll be adding the pre-K onto there and kind of reconfiguring the grade level at the existing middle school or Pierce. So as everyone is probably aware, hopefully aware by this point, the parcel of land we're looking for is the area where Guile Road touches down to Blue Hills Parkway. The map shown here is a little different than what you might normally see, but using Brooks Field in the upper right, it kind of gives a landmark as you're looking at this. Currently, over the past 6 months, we've been working with the town attorney or town council to rectify the land. And our previous intent was to swap the parcel that's shown in yellow with a portion of the parcel that was shown in red. Through further study, both parcels are covered under Article 97, so there's no possible way to actually do a swap between them. But we are working with the town to do a swap of additional parcels outside of what's shown here on the map. So our intent is to still build the school on the parcel shown here in yellow. That parcel is approximately 6.8 acres. So this is kind of the meat of the presentation. What we wanted to give you is, since our last meeting, we've teamed up with DRA Architecture to take that parcel that we just talked about and start putting pencil to paper and develop some options just so we can start seeing what potentials would look like. When they did that, to do this exercise, there are certain metrics that go into it that drive the space planning on those sites. So what you're seeing now are the two options and the metrics that we provided to DRA, which kind of represent the previous options that we're showing in the table. The educational program that we provided them for option 1 was the 2 pre-K classrooms and the additional 24 classrooms, which again mimics the study that they did before. Special ed, small group rooms, and all the other ancillary spaces that go along with an elementary school. For the middle school and preschool, it's a little bit bigger of a facility, mainly due to the size of what we'd be moving up there. And then the site requirements. So the derivative of all that stuff is basically what has to happen at the site. So obviously bus drop-off, parent car drop-offs are the same. Parking spaces are a little bit more at the middle and preschool, again, mainly due to the size, and then outdoor play areas. Typically you wouldn't have that at a middle school, but because we'd have the pre-K there, they do have it. So the conceptual design of option 1 or the elementary school. So as an engineer, these are kind of the fun things we get into at the beginning. You get a big empty site and how do you carve it up? So initially what happens, what DRA does is they go through and just kind of, look at a macro level, very high level, where they would build things and how things would flow. So as you're seeing here, there's kind of areas for the bus drop off, parking areas, where they want to put the building, and then associated play areas and grass fields. So as they start doing that, they fine tune it a little bit more. This is the pen to paper exercise that I was discussing. And they start developing, more and more program as they're going through. And as we zoom in, you'll see there's a little more fine tuning of the floor plans. So what you see here is the elementary school option. In the upper portion, I'll see if my mouse works. Yep. In the upper portion here is a circulation for a bus drop-off, kind of similar to what you see at the Collycock Cunningham. And then additionally on the side of it is a parking area for faculty and staff, a play area in front of it, and then essentially a common area where you walk in with classrooms. This option provides a 2-level structure. So the first level is shown here. The second level is shown there. With this, the keynote to look at, and I'll go back to the other site, is the adjacent abutters at Home Inc., basically on the bottom part of the page. So what the intent of this design is to keep kind of all the play areas or noise areas away from Home Inc. and keep for lack of a better word, a 2-level solid wall on the backside. The middle school concept with the preschool wing, which was essentially option 2, had a similar look and feel as they were carving it up. It's an oddly shaped site that we're dealing with, so there's some similarities between them. This option is a little bit different. There's parking on the western side for faculty and staff, and the bus drop off and pickup is on the opposite side that you see here. The layout of the building is also a little bit different, mainly because it was representing a middle school, and then we had them alter it, at an updated stage to include the preschool. So what they looked at is, for the preschool, we could take over the first floor, and for this option, it's a 3-story structure. The second and third floors, the second floor is on the right here. Again, mainly classrooms with center rooms for maker spaces, project areas, and stuff like that. And what we would do is to create additional spaces, kind of build it out on that second floor in the kind of non-pen and paper area, that's digitally enhanced here. The third floor, again, is a repetition of the classrooms that you can see here. So for us, we've got 2 options with schematic design at it right now. What we're looking to do is gather further public engagement from there, from the site selection and what type of school we want to build. We're also pairing this with an overcrowding video. We've gone through the schools and taken video, interviewed all the principals, and we're developing a kind of a video that we'll utilize with this with these presentations. The other part that we need from your committee, and that's kind of why we're giving the update tonight, is a decision on what grade configuration we should be looking at, and then those type of things will feed into our next item 3, which is our studies. And the main one we're looking at now is cost. Because they're 2 different size facilities, the costs of them are different. In addition, we're also knowing traffic is always an issue in the town. We're looking to bring on a traffic consultant early on to kind of look at the 2 options and give some pros and cons on them also. And then finally, our final step we're working towards, hopefully this May town meeting, is to get an article in to kind of finalize the land swap so that we can, for lack of a better word, own that parcel that we originally talked to. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Member Rose Marin for a few more comments.
There we go. Thank you, Sean. If you could stop sharing your screen, Sean, I could, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to build a little bit about what Sean was saying about our community outreach and what we're planning in that regard. And this was something that I had wanted to discuss at our last meeting, but it got to be almost 10:30 and we just decided to put it off until this meeting. But we have tentatively planned forums with 2 key stakeholder groups, one being Milton Public Schools staff and faculty, and the other being parents in the community. And what we'd like to do is do a brief presentation similar to what Sean has done, and then hear from both groups their thoughts and questions about the process. And that will help, we will be able to bring that data back to the school committee. And we're hoping to come back to the school committee on March 16th to have a further discussion. I'm also doing some more research into just the literature about grade configurations. And I'll tell you right now, it's very mixed, but I'll tell you what we've learned. We discuss it at our last school building committee meeting, and we'll bring to you that information as well as feedback that we hear from our forums. And then we hope that school committee will, because school committee is responsible for determining the educational program for whatever we build. I'm hoping that we'll be able to come to agreement on that and to take a vote. It may not be at the March 16th meeting. We may need to wait till the next meeting after that, but that's our thinking. But I think that's pretty much our update, and open it to any questions anyone has.
Member Rosemarin, are you still going ahead with those dates for the community forums that we had already discussed?
Yes, that's the that is our plan. Let me pull those up. We're talking about doing a forum with staff and faculty on February 10th at 7 in the morning. And we're just putting together the posting for that will hopefully be out by the end of this week. And then the following, we're going to do 2 forums for families and community members, one on March 3rd at 7:30 p.m. and one on March 10th at 4 p.m. And Superintendent Jett will be able to be at 2 out of those 3. I don't remember exactly which ones right off, but his schedule is so jam-packed for the month of March with all of the screening committees and hiring work that needs to be done, and is very busy superintendent. So we're grabbing what we can of his time, and so that is our plan at this point, and we'll bring back everything we find out to you in mid-March.
Okay. Your plan is to have these forums interactive where people can submit questions or ask questions, Sean, and in the moment, and you just maybe taking feedback. Obviously, you won't have a decision, so you'll be presenting perhaps those 2 options, and even you're still doing research about other considerations, right?
Well, that's a good question. A few responses in terms of during the forums themselves. Sean has turned us on to an application called Slido. I don't know if any of you participated in that, but it's an interactive application where people can write their questions into that app, and then others can like those questions, and it raises those questions that get the most likes up to the top, and we go through them, and we found in the other forums that we did in the fall that it helped us get through a lot more questions more quickly using that app. I don't know, Sean, if you want to add anything more about that.
Trying to unmute. The Q&A portion using Slido just organizes it a lot better. And it repeats repetitive questions, and it allows people that sometimes don't have a voice, that are nervous to ask a question. If they see one that they like, all they have to do is like it to get it higher on there. Also, there's interactive ways of using polling through it. So we'll be working to come up with some ideas on some, discrete questions to gauge feedback, further than outside of just Q&A.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Does anyone else have any questions for Member Rosemarin? Thank you for that presentation, Sean. It was terrific. And for this drawings and schematics. It's very exciting to think about the future.
Thank you all. Thank you, Sean.
All right, now we'll have an opportunity in our meeting for citizen speak. If there's anyone here who would like to address the committee, we set aside 15 minutes for citizen speak. We ask people to raise their hand if they'd like to address the committee. We ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes, to state your name and your address when you speak. We will not be responding to your comments as we do not respond to citizen speak. And we ask that you address policies, questions and comments you have about the meeting, but not anything particular pertaining to people. You can raise your hand if you'd like to address the committee.
The first person I have that I'm elevating, I believe, is it Kristen Cosio?
It is. Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. This is Kristen Cosiel, 17 Standish Road. So I am just here to address the COVID policies in the school. And I did want to update what I have written down just to thank you, Mr. Jett, for taking the time to apply for the waiver to make masks optional in the middle and the high school. I think that's really important. So I'm here to speak tonight in support of an urgency of normal campaign for an urgent return to pre-pandemic norms in our school. I urge that any other precautions beyond what is required by the state be abandoned, such as silent lunch, having children mask up when they speak, masks be encouraged outside, spacing the children out while in the classrooms. Now that contact tracing has been eliminated, kids should be able to choose who they sit with at lunch. We need to stop promoting a culture of fear surrounding COVID. It is unavoidable that our children will be able to avoid this virus forever. And now that the CDC shows that pediatric mortality is similar to flu, we need to return to pre-pandemic norms in our schools. There is a rise in mental health crisis in our children, suicide attempts, drug overdoses, eating disorders. They need a return to normal. This pandemic has been incredibly difficult on individuals of all ages, but children still have to live with mitigation measures that are harsher than most adults are subjected to, even than I am when I work in my hospital. Parents are heartbroken over what they're seeing in their homes because we feel powerless to help our children. Please listen to us when we say the kids are not all right, and eliminating all COVID practices other than what is mandated by the state is so important to support their mental health. I'm going to share some quotes that aren't from children in Milton, but just to understand what kids are going through. Sometimes my mask comes down a little and I get yelled at and I tighten it up and I can't breathe. We're not allowed to stand and sing in music class because they told us standing spreads the virus more than sitting. So we sit to sing. The masks make my glasses fog up and I can't see. They keep the windows open all the time and it's cold. I don't like school anymore. It's like a prison. After almost 2 years of this, parents deserve a real answer. It's now impossible to ignore that we were not exaggerating about our concerns last year, that not all children thrived with remote learning. Parents, again, are sharing similar concerns that their children really need a return to normal. This includes de-escalating the fear around COVID in schools, applying for a mask waiver in middle and high school. Thank you, Mr. Jett. That should include both vaccinated and unvaccinated children, and letting parents know the plan. We're entering our 3rd year of this, and we really deserve an answer to when our children will return to normal. I hope the news tonight about middle and high school means that when DESE lifts the mask mandate, that Milton will allow parents to decide if they want their child to wear a mask. 860 medical professionals have now signed the urgency of normal statement advocating for a return to pre-pandemic conditions in the schools. I encourage you to visit the urgency of normal website to understand how important it is that we start creating a less fearful school environment now and understand the data that shows why it is safe to do so. It is especially important to take advantage of the gift that Omicron and vaccines have given us with allowing a safe off-ramp for COVID precautions in our school, especially because we don't know what COVID has in store for us in the future. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen, for coming. Appreciate it.
I believe the next person that I just elevated is Erin Bradley.
Welcome, Erin.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you so much, Superintendent Jett and school committee members. I just wanted to touch briefly on the school building report, which thank you so much, Member Rosemarin, for that. I was in the school system many years ago. It ends with a 0 on my reunion that's coming up, and it's not the first or second. I just wanted to say I went to kind of an unconditional schematic of how we did our grades. I went through K through 5 in an elementary school, 6 and 7 in a middle school, 8 and 9 in a junior high, and then 10, 11, 12 in a high school. I wanted to just say really quickly and briefly that I applaud this second option. I really thought that the transitions going through my school years made it easier for me to get closer to a cohort of friends so that we were kind of encapsulated. It made it easier as we transitioned through all the schools and not harder. And I know that that's odd to think of, but if you think of 8th and 9th graders hanging out together, it's a much easier thing than 9th graders and 12th graders. I will say that by the time I was a senior in high school, they moved the 9th grade up to the high school. And so we now, the town I grew up in has the exact same schematics as what that option 2 says. So I just wanted to say it's a great thing. The one piece that I thought was missing, and this probably speaks to, you know, the 1970s, is the fact that there is still no pool in any of our public schools. One of the things that we had to do, even mortified as we all were, was in junior high, we had to go through swim lessons, and everybody that graduated from our school district knew how to swim. With all of the kids that are in our town and at Turner's Pond and, you know, all over the place swimming, I just wanted to say it might be something. I know we can't afford it. I know I'm on the warrant committee. I understand that, but it's something that might be an option in one of those floors of the buildings, if we could think about it, because it might be a benefit not only for our swim team, which I was also on in high school, but it might be something that all of our kids can benefit from, especially starting in preschool. So that is it. I thank you all for being here this week, and I hope you have a good weekend.
Thank you, Erin Bradley. If anyone else has any comments, you could raise your hand. At this time, Chair Abahat, I do not see any hands raised.
Thank you, Superintendent Jett. And thank you to our citizens who came tonight and shared their thoughts and comments. Superintendent Jett, I know you had asked me a question about addressing. I know we had received some emails about mitigation strategies as well, and I had asked you to address them at the meeting, and you addressed them through your comments about the mask exemption thing. But perhaps we can create some sort of document that we can share eventually with the community that that outlines what mitigation strategies are still in effect and which ones are not, and how we will be moving forward. If you'd like to just briefly address that for a moment.
I will address it in my blog because I think there's some misinformation out there about what we're doing or not doing in the Milton Public Schools. I want folks to know that kids are going to the lunch with their homeroom class, which is very similar to what they did pre-pandemic. We're not having silent lunches. What we're asking students to do, and we did that only in the month of January when COVID cases were high, and people may not remember, we had 700 and around 45 students a day out in the first week of January with COVID, and we had an average of 75 teachers out daily in that first week. What we asked students to do while eating, you could take your mask off. We asked you to eat, and then when you're done eating, your mask goes back on. Never was it silent. Students are still having lunch with their cohort, their class, as they would normally do in a given year. We do still have recess in some cases. Obviously, it's stifled a little bit by the amount of snow that we have on some of the school campuses, and then also when the weather is not favorable. In class, there is group work in class. It may be smaller group work, but it's group work in class. And so I think that, and I will address this in the blog tomorrow, but I think it's very important. And because this is a public meeting, and I appreciate Kristen Cosio's comments, but I do want to elevate the fact that she was using quotes that she said were from other students that may not be in the Milton Public Schools. So I think it's important to highlight that. But our students are, you know, prior to January, activities, everything was in place. The only real restriction was the mask. And so I think that's important for folks to know. We did have some limited space issues at the Tucker. That was the only school that really divided some of the students at that point in time until January, when those cases got extremely high. And that wasn't isolated to the town of Milton, that was in the Commonwealth. And I do agree, Omicron doesn't seem to be as contagious, but I do want to caution some folks, because we do have folks in the district who is dealing with some very severe fallouts or issues or side effects from the COVID-19 or Omicron. So I do want to say that, and I want to be sensitive to those folks. In any time that we apply for the waiver for the remainder of the year, if granted, and we decide to pivot, masks will be optional for those folks who remain unvaccinated because of medical reasons or just choice, for students that is, or for those people that just feel a little more comfortable, it will be optional. So I do want to clarify that, and I would definitely try to elevate that conversation in the blog tomorrow as well.
Thank you, Superintendent Chen. I think that we are all looking forward to an exit ramp to a life that is still going to involve some mitigation strategies for whenever this evolves in different ways. But I think as we move away from contact tracing, as we move to the testing at home program, as we move to having the waivers, we will see a return to things that feel more familiar to us as a community. And I do want to thank the students for their continued support, and the parents as well. All right, thank you. All right, Chair Dr. Elaine Craighead, you are up for finance.
Just sort of randomly, I know we don't address citizen speak, but randomly, I will say someone who signs the vendor warrant. We spend a good deal of money renting space for the swim team. That's money that we could save going forward. And you can also rent out a pool to bring money in. So just saying. Okay. More particularly, going back to the actual agenda for the evening, Community Schools has made a proposal which has been voted on by finance to recommend approval by the school committee, and I'll go through what that is. The proposal is to offer paid leave to employees of community schools. And this would involve one full-time administrative assistant who works year-round, 4 supervisors of before school and after school programs who work 10-month contracts, and staff who work under 20 hours a week who work for 10 months. This does not affect high school counselors, seasonal staff, or volunteers, but it does affect that staff who work under 20 hours a week: nurses, assistant supervisors, group leaders, and support staff. So the policy that's being proposed by Milton Community Schools basically mirrors existing Milton Public Schools paid leave formulas for Unit D. And for those of you who are not highly familiar with Unit D, I'll go over some of the particulars. What's being proposed is that the administrative assistant who works year-round would get sick leave, holidays, bereavement, personal days, and paid vacation. It's being proposed that the supervisors get sick leave, holidays, bereavement, and personal days, and that the less than 20 hours a week staff get sick, personal, and bereavement. So what Unit D specifies is that for sick leave, in your first year, you get 5 days, or the equivalent of 1 work week. 2 to 5 years, you get 10 days, and at over 5 years, 6+, you get 12 days. Some details to add to that are you can carry as many as 110 sick days. But if you cash those out through retirement or death, you can only earn $10 a day for 30% of those days, right? So let's say you have 90 sick leave days left. You can cash 30 of those in, but it's at $10 a day. So that would be, the most is about $330 to cash out. Bereavement is 5 days for immediate family. I think that just includes mother, father, spouse, kids, and then 3 days for all other family. It's very specific. It includes in-laws, grandparents, but not extended like cousins. Personal days would be 3 days. 1 you can take without any reason given, and 2 of the 3 days you have to give a reason, and it's approved by the superintendent. That's it. On the holidays are obviously the holidays that all regular Milton Public School employees would get 8 paid holidays. I think it's 8, maybe it's 9 now. But the additional piece that doesn't mirror Unit D is the vacation leave. And the vacation leave would be added only for that full-time administrative assistant for community schools. And it would be according to the non-unit personnel vacation leave policy. And that would be for 1 to 5 years, you get 2 weeks. And I believe that's what that person is in that category right now. For 5 to 10 years, 3 weeks, 10 to 20 years, 4 weeks, and so forth. This proposal for paid leave would allow for more flexibility for the employees of community schools, certainly more financial stability. Right now, they don't have any paid leave. So if they take leave, they don't get paid for it. And many of these employees work solely for community schools. It's not necessarily just an extra on top of a full-time job. I would like to say to all of you on screen who do not are not aware of this, but more importantly, I think you all do know this, but more importantly for anyone viewing this, Milton Community Schools is a self-sustaining program. The money that they take in is all from monies received for fees for students attending before and after school programs. And they have their own revolving fund. We do not, it's not part of our operating budget, okay? So this wouldn't affect the budget proposal that we've made for FY23. It doesn't affect our budget for this year. If we approve it tonight, it is effective immediately and retroactive to August 30th, 2021. So first of all, before I make any sort of motion, does anybody, Assistant Superintendent Dexter.
Yeah, if you don't mind me just adding a couple comments. The proposal does not include a buyback upon termination. So that's one difference from some of the other unit policies. For anyone that's not working full-time that's eligible for these benefits, that would be prorated. So if they work a 5-hour day, 1 day is only 5 hours. And to your point, I just want to also highlight, even though you already did, that it's only going back retroly to August of 2021, which means a lot of these employees have been there long-term. So we're considering that August 31st of 2021 as being the first date. So for example, the administrative assistant would be considered in year 1 of the policy change. So they wouldn't, even if that person's been here 20 years, you wouldn't automatically go up to that higher level. So those are just a couple points that I thought might help clarify things.
No, those are important points. Thanks very much. Dr. Carroll?
I do have one question, which I'll preface to say I support paid leave, and I wish I could vote for paid leave for every worker in America. But I do have a question about the financial implications, even if they're not directly for our budget. because I do recall last spring when we voted to raise the fees that were being charged to families. So is that the proposal we received doesn't include any numbers? Would it be necessary to somehow like staff substitutes or something like that in the event that employees do take days off or leave? Is that built into the proposal, I guess? And would it be, would we anticipate that because it's a self-sustaining program would result in higher fees?
We asked her both of those questions. She is the director of community schools, Martha Sandoval. No plan to raise fees at this point. She raised them recently. Secondly, she said that anytime somebody needs to miss, they already do this and they will continue to do this, is that they just all work to cover for that person without bringing in a sub to raise the costs.
Thank you.
Assistant Superintendent Dexter. Oh,
I'm good.
Okay. Apparently I got that right.
I was going to say.
Okay, great. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Dr. Carroll? Okay. Any other questions?
I just want to say that Martha specifically said this is not going to impact tuitions.
Yeah.
She didn't plan to raise any tuitions, and that I think the total cost, Elaine, if I remember, was around $12,000 for all of the paid and the paid leave.
Yeah, and that reminds me, we also asked, or I specifically asked for to look at where her funds were right now, just to make sure of all these things we're talking about. And they have a very healthy balance in community schools, so there's really no concern on that front. Assistant Superintendent Dexter.
Yeah, so to Member White's point, the cost relates to in the event that these employees were sick or had to take time off, they just went without pay. They're the only employees under Milton Public Schools or the town of Milton that were not treated similarly. And just for a little history, I believe that goes back to the days when Milton Community Schools did not fall under Milton Public Schools. It was a separate entity. And somewhere long before my time, it got rolled into under the Milton Public Schools umbrella. And we're just trying to address this and make it consistent with what everybody else that works from the Milton Public Schools gets. And to Dr. Carroll's point, sick leave and paid leave so that they can tend to their health and their family's health and whatnot is really, really important. And, I applaud Martha for, advocating for these people and getting this to move forward. So.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing that she shared with us was that recently one of the community schools employees suffered a bereavement and had to take time off without getting paid for it, unlike every other member of Milton Public Schools. So, okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay. I had a question. All right, so I'm going to make a motion to approve the, I had the actual language somewhere, to approve the community schools proposal as outlined in the documentation that we all received.
I'll second it.
Okay. This will be a roll call vote. Member Rosteni?
Yes.
Chair Eberhardt?
Yes.
Member White?
Yes.
Member Rosemarin?
Yes.
Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So that's a 6-0. I think that's our first time this evening. So
Excellent
very nice
presentation, Dr. Cricket, on that. Thank you for bringing that forward to us.
Yeah.
And Superintendent Dexter, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate the help with that. Assistant Superintendent. I just want to call you Amy. It's so much easier than,
Yeah, you can
than
do
all
that.
those words,
I
especially,
don't like formality, but I'm supposed to behave that way. In the meeting.
no, especially as we're creeping up on 10 o'clock. I
Yeah, I
can't speak
know.
anymore.
What
Okay,
day is it,
so
right?
the last thing I have to do is vendor warrants, and I have to do them separately tonight.
Yep.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve vendor warrant number 31 payable on January 27th, 2022 in the amount of $684,809.64. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Let's see. Member Osteni,
Yes.
Chair Eberhard,
Yes.
Member White,
Yes.
Member Rosemarin,
Yes.
and Dr. Carroll.
Yes.
I'm a yes. So that's 6-0.
Mhm.
2 in a row. All right. And I'd also like to make a motion to approve vendor warrant number 32 payable on February 3rd, 2022 in the amount of $283,709.48. Chair Eberhard, can you second this for
I
me?
was just going to say second. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to take a roll call vote. Member Osteni,
Yes.
Chair Eberhard,
Yes.
Member Rosemarin,
Yes.
Dr. Carroll,
Yes.
Member White,
Abstain.
an abstention, and I'm a yes. So that's a 5-0-1. And so ends my report. Thank you very much.
Dr. Cricket, may I? Oh, sorry.
Oh. Assistant Superintendent Dexter?
Well, Chair Eberhard, you might have maybe going to say what I was going to say about the budget.
Well, no, actually,
Oh.
I wasn't going to bring up that, but we can.
Oh, no, I forgot to say. Okay.
I was just going to ask a question about, have we voted fees that we need to vote for people to operate for summer programs, to pay their staff for preschool? Will we be doing that shortly?
Yes.
Okay. It came up in a different capacity for myself today.
Okay.
And it certainly occurred to me that perhaps we needed to think about that ourselves.
And I forgot to say in my report, I meant to say this, but I was so focused on trying to get all the particulars of the community schools thing in place. I forgot to say that we presented the budget to the warrant committee on January 24th, that evening. That's where we are right now. I have a question, not for me, but for someone on screen. Have we been told who the school committee's subcommittee is going to be from the warrant committee? Can we please share that with viewers? Thank you.
James, is that, Superintendent Jetta, is that okay if I?
You're on mute, Amy.
I was trying to retrieve the list real quick. I don't.
Sorry. Okay.
I do know Susan Haggerty, Scott Johnson. I'm forgetting the others. A guy,
Mohammed.
Mohammed, and a gentleman, Steve. And
Steve, he's new. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. Amy, did you have something else to add?
Yeah, I just want to say, for clarification for anybody watching, that on the agenda, it did say that we would be taking a vote on the budget. That was because we were told that we may need to take something off of our capital request and roll it into the operating budget. And I received word that that's not necessary at this point from the finance director, Karen Praval. She said that she believes we can leave it where it is in capital. Therefore, we don't need to take another vote on that. That was for the Chromebooks, and that's also why ARPA is listed, because there was some confusion as to where it belonged in the school's budget request. But she did tell me she felt it was in the appropriate place for this year anyways, in capital, but we could talk about where to put it next year.
Great. Yes.
So there's no vote.
So there's no vote on 6A. That's why I had it struck, because we didn't need to vote on it or even discuss it, because it's just going to stay as it was when we originally presented it. Dr. Carroll?
Yeah, can maybe Assistant Superintendent Dexter or anybody, the meeting we have Friday morning, what is that? Can someone just remind me or explain what that actually is?
Assistant Superintendent Dexter can.
So it's my understanding from Select Board, I believe he's the chair of their sub-finance, Mike Zulis, from discussions at last week's meeting, that they just want an opportunity to ask questions about the school budget request. That I asked if the expectation was that we would be doing some kind of slideshow presentation like we did to the warrant committee. He preferred we don't do that we just make ourselves available for questions. And that's my understanding of what the purpose of that meeting is. I would think that we could do something if the school committee felt it was appropriate, but that was somewhat the tone of what the expectation was.
Is this a meeting of the finance subcommittee and the finance subcommittee of the select board?
Correct, but it's posted, I believe, as a full school committee, is it not?
It is.
So anyone can attend. And it's bright and early at 7 a.m. on Friday. All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, I believe ARPA might be listed too, but I asked Charlene to just put that on because they had it on theirs, just in case they had anything to ask the schools about the requests that we have in so far.
Do we have members of the finance subcommittee who will be able to attend that meeting?
I will.
Okay.
I will attend.
I will be there.
Thank you, as always, Dr. Craighead. The budget. Maybe that'll be your bench next to mine and Sheila's. All about the money. Okay, curriculum and instruction advisory committee. Would you like have an update?
Yes, we had a meeting on January 13th with Member White, Dr. Carroll, Assistant Superintendent Sheehan, as well as Amy Kaplan, who is the elementary social studies director. We had two topics essentially on the agenda. The first being giving an update on the restorative justice and anti-racist curriculum work and any associated professional development. And one of the subtopics was a status update on the anti-racism and sexual harassment reporting system, which did go live soon after that meeting. And essentially was described as a modification to the current bullying reporting system, but we added categories that were shared from the Anti-Defamation League. And at that time, the district was working on a communication plan to make sure that all of the populations that had the opportunity to respond were aware of the system's availability. We were also informed that there was a grade level review on what is being taught related to anti-hate and anti-racism. And it's now being put into a report format, so we can share that hopefully at the next school committee meeting or the first one in March. And in terms of the anti-racist curriculum review, as you know, both the social studies, the elementary social studies department as well as the math department were both conducting curriculum reviews. And the social studies department is using Inquire Ed as their rubric for evaluating the curriculum. And the math department was using a tool that was developed by the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We were given an update on the professional development associated with restorative justice. We were told that the principals and assistant principals would be completing the restorative justice training at Suffolk University by the summer, and that some of the adjustment counselors and teachers have engaged in professional development on their own, so independent of what the district sponsored. So we're very pleased to know that there are more people that are engaging in this work. And then we entered into a discussion about the social studies curriculum review. And as I mentioned, Kim Kaplan, who's the elementary social studies coordinator, gave a very thorough overview of the process to date. The people participating was a composition of 11 teachers representing all 4 elementary schools at various grade levels, 1 elementary school principal, 1 elementary school assistant principal, as well as the ELA curriculum coordinator. Right now, the district is piloting 3 different curriculums for evaluation, and they're using the, if I get the name right, Inquire Ed rubric, which thanks to Dr. Carroll, she was able to report is a very effective and robust review tool. And the 3 curriculums that are being evaluated include Pearson and McGraw-Hill, and their curriculums are aligned with the new Massachusetts DESE standards for social studies. And those providers were all present as the standards are being rewritten. So a lot of the work aligns with what DESE expects. But through the review process, it's a very organized effort to get both feedback on common, like they're piloting several lessons from all 3 providers so that the teachers can debrief together and make an assessment comparing apples to apples, whether or not they believe that the curriculum that's being offered by these 3 vendors meet and or exceed our expectations. And I want to say that's it. But I want to thank everyone who participated in the meeting. It's been very helpful to have these conversations because we can have more detailed information. And just thanks to everybody. Does anyone have any questions about what I shared? Dr. Craighead? You're on mute.
I am. I'm just curious about the restorative justice program. So you said that the training would be basically completed by the summer. Is the hope to have a fully fleshed out program in place for fall, or?
That's a really good question. So the training that was shared was just for the principals and assistant principals. I will ask Assistant Superintendent Sheehan to answer that question.
So I think that the goal is for us to continue to train the leadership team members. So we have started with the principals, and then we will move on to other members of our leadership team. And that would be our next steps for training.
I will just add that we are partnered with Vector Solutions, and they have, in the interim, they have the various modules on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and supports for our faculty and staff that we are still exploring and engage in, and hopefully we can get that started. So in addition to the restorative justice, we're trying to also do the other trainings through modules in the interim, potentially with Vector Solutions.
Thank you, Superintendent Jett. Teachers will be able to access professional development on diversity, equity, and inclusion on their own. So this is online PD, and we're very excited about this program.
Thank you, Superintendent Sheehan and Jett, and Member Rostini and the Curriculum Advisory Committee. I just have a quick question. So to Dr. Craighead's point, it probably would be helpful to sort of outline what the rollout of the program and its implementation with students is going to look like next year, and so, like to have sort of that kind of plan as you work through the different trainings for educators, but then really what is it going to look like in real time, hands-on learning with students. And then the other thing I just wanted to say that I have received some emails and inquiries from the community about anti-Semitism and how that is being addressed in the reviews of curriculums and elevated in conversations as we think about a social studies review curriculum. So just something to really think about given the times that we live in and the ongoing anti-Semitic things that people are experiencing. How are we talking about that? What is that going to look like in our review of the curriculum in addition to the other things that we've been addressing? So I don't know, I haven't looked at the standards recently, but maybe that's something we can share or have maybe at building levels, even with principals, having conversations with families as we think about the social studies review and the curriculum that's going to be rolled out.
I can add that to the next meeting agenda. Kim Kaplan, as I mentioned, is using Inquire Ed, which Dr. Carroll had mentioned is considered very high quality rubric.
Right.
And I can't imagine it would not include that, but until we ask, we actually don't know. So very good question.
Yeah, I think you're just being more like intentional and thinking about how we incorporate those conversations into the ongoing education for students around anti-Semitism.
Sorry, I was just going to add on that point that it connects also into the 6 through 12 social studies and history curriculum review, which hasn't gotten underway yet, as far as I know. But also, I think in with the DEI work as well. That seemed to be what you were saying, but yeah, I agree that that's important.
Yeah, I just think that sometimes that specific intentionality of the wording and the teaching of it, I just think be more conscious of that as we talk about those things in the community. So great. Thank you so much. I'm very excited for this work. I look forward to hearing more. Yes, Assistant Superintendent Sheehan.
Thank you. I did want to let you know that the grades 6 through 12 curriculum review has begun, and we can provide an update on that at a future meeting, or we can also put that on the agenda, Member Ross Denny, for our next curriculum and instruction meeting. They have begun some of the work on that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for all your work on that. We're lucky to have you here, Assistant Superintendent Sheehan, to help us this year as we do this.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, Health and Wellness, Member White.
Okay, we met last Friday, and the goal of last Friday's meeting was to review all of our committee had broken into subgroups to review certain categories for a wellness assessment that we are doing. Next month, we are meeting with a DESE member who's a consultant, and Jackie had gotten a grant for her to come and help us review, our strengths and areas that we need to improve around our wellness in school. Some of the categories include nutrition education in the district, standards for child nutrition programs and school meals, standards for physical education and physical activity, wellness and promotion and marketing. So those are all the categories that we met in and discussed. Everyone had to sort of do a self-evaluation. So the DESE consultant is coming to our next meeting, which is February 18th, I believe, and she's going to help us look at where we are, and we will be making, hopefully, I'm going to invite Jackie to come to a meeting, possibly in March, a school committee meeting, just to take a look at, what areas we need to improve, what areas we're doing well in. One of the interesting things is some of the categories that we had been doing really well in previously have been majorly impacted by the pandemic. So to give you an example, one of the things that we that they had been wanting to work on and had improved greatly was high school participation in the breakfast program. And because they had breakfast after the bell, and the kids could grab a bag and go into their classroom when there was morning announcements and have something to eat, they haven't been able to do that since COVID. So that participation has dropped off. But now that kids can eat in the cafeteria, it's getting a little bit better, but it still needs, to look at different ways to improve it. So we're looking forward to having her come and help us see where we need to make some improvements. And we expect that there'll be areas where we need to improve. Other issues that were discussed was that the council, the health board gave an update on COVID and that our numbers in Milton were decreasing, which is good news. And then the Milton Coalition spoke about, they provided some money for the Milton Public Schools to do an evaluation of our health curriculum this year. And one of the things that the director of the Milton Coalition would like to include is to think about working to develop a sex education curriculum into our health curriculum. And Kim Coughlin, who is the director of nurses, is working with the Milton Coalition to look at the entire health curriculum for the Milton Public Schools. So our next meeting is going to be February 18th when the consultant will be joining us. That's it.
Thank you, Member White. I was hoping that Jackie wasn't listening when Principal Cahill was talking about the yodels and the.
I had the same thought. Said, "Oh, should kill us."
It's gonna kill us. But that was like what I was thinking. So maybe she wasn't listening. I don't know. Thank you. Policy Subcommittee, Dr. Carroll, yodels.
Sure. I'll be as concise as possible. Or last thing before the minutes. We met as a policy subcommittee on January 24th. We had 3 topics on our agenda. The first thing has already been discussed a bit tonight. That was our face covering policy, which, as everyone knows, we've been revisiting at least every other month. We had last revisited it in November. So what we discussed at the meeting was looking ahead, understanding that DESE's statewide mask mandate currently is until February 28th has already been discussed tonight, and the development of Superintendent Jett applying for the waivers for Milton High School and the Pierce Middle School has happened since that meeting took place. So I know that those are things we'll be able to discuss in, over the coming weeks as we see how things continue to unfold. So that was more or less the discussion on face coverings, that we were optimistic, thankful that the numbers are moving in the right direction, and looking to pick that conversation back up as we understood more where DESE was going to be going as we get closer to the current expiration of the mandate. So that was kind of where that got left off. I assume at this point in time that we next meet as a subcommittee on February 28th. And so I know that we will surely talk about this at that meeting. We also had discussed the opportunity of Nurse Coughlin having requested the vaccine clinic. So I'm really excited to hear the update that that's now been scheduled. That's terrific news. That was what we discussed around the face covering policy. The thing we spent the most time discussing was our calendar policy, IC. This is a policy that does relate to the academic calendar document that we've been discussing and that we had approved the tentative draft for at our last full school committee meeting. The calendar policy itself, we noted, is a policy dating back to 1975 that was last reviewed with minor revisions 15 years ago. So it's good to be returning to this policy and bringing the lens of equity and inclusion and the diversity of our community to the conversation. So we had a wonderful opportunity to have further discussion with Dr. Mona Abozena, the scholar, community member, and parent who shared perspectives at Citizen Speak not long ago, and who's been in contact with member Rose Marin to share perspectives from some of our Milton Muslim neighbors. And it was a great discussion that went well beyond the inclusion of Muslim holidays on the calendar. And we discussed things like as Dr. Abozena brought up, the politics of the day off. And we kind of agreed that these are larger conversations that we will have as a school committee and as a community in terms of which cultural and religious holidays do we celebrate with a day off versus which ones do we just acknowledge and honor on our calendar. And in the meanwhile, have a robust policy in place that mirrors the practices that we know from Superintendent Jett and other members of our leadership team. We've had longstanding practices in Milton Public Schools about accommodating students to make sure that if they're celebrating a cultural or religious holiday that's not a day off from school, that they are not penalized for that, that it doesn't compromise their ability to participate academically or in important extracurricular opportunities. The issue is that our policy just has not actually guaranteed that protection for students. So that's our work ahead, is to make sure that our policy actually is updated to reflect the inclusive practices that have been in place and to kind of push us to, think about how we want our policy to be. We have Dr. Abozena shared resources with us from DESE to support us in thinking about language and wording. We know that there are many other local districts that have taken steps to revise their calendar policies that we can look at as examples. And our next step for that is that at the February meeting, we'll be considering a redlined draft revision of our calendar policy that reflects this discussion that I just tried to summarize for you. But it was, I think, a rich discussion, and we do recognize the need to update our policy and then to also embark on this kind of perhaps longer term discussion with community input as we consider, how we kind of honor and celebrate the cultural and religious holidays that are important to our community going forward. So that was the calendar policy conversation, which we will be revisiting next month. And then the final update is that once again, we did have the MASC recommended revisions to our fiscal policies, section D. So the Massachusetts Association of School Committees periodically shares recommendations for updates or revisions to policies. And they do that kind of section by section, and they have given us this very lengthy series of updates recommended to our fiscal policies in that section. We recognize that it's budget season and that we do need to have this discussion with Assistant Superintendent Dexter kind of at the table to get your input on what makes sense for us to adopt of the MASC recommended changes. And we agreed that we would, and I need to follow up with you on this, so I will do that, Assistant Superintendent Dexter, that we would just sort of learn when you might have availability to participate in that discussion. And we recognize that it is something we need to attend to this year, but it's not ultra urgent, and budget season happening right now is the top priority. And so this is something that we will bring back to the full school committee, but probably not imminently. But it remains on our plate. Any questions, or Member Rosemarin or Dr. Craig had things you want to add?
Well, it sounds like you had a great meeting in 1975. That's a long time ago. Along with the 15 years. So yeah, I mean, it was very timely. I had heard a report, another school committee made the news that they were having a conversation about revising their calendar. I can't remember what district it was in, but I thought, oh, that's interesting that other districts are having those same conversations. So thank you for all your hard work on that to the policy subcommittee, and we look forward to the next updates at the next meeting. So we're cycling down to our last agenda items. Under the chair's report, I had an update. I sent you all last night a folder that has information in it about a mid-cycle review for the district. That conversation warrants more than a few minutes at 10:15 on the evening of February 2nd. So if you would all just have an opportunity to look that all over, and Dr. Carroll sent me a question tonight that was really helpful, and then I can address those. We will discuss this at our next meeting. One thing that I would like to say is that we have these, the review happens at school committee meetings in public open meetings. You can email me with questions or comments or thoughts you want to have, or superintendent chat or whatever, but we're not having any conversations with each other separate from ones that we would have at a meeting. Just so you're aware, just because, of emails and stuff, try really hard to be conscious of that. So hard in this world that we live in. That's how I communicate at work so much. But please look that all over, and we will discuss that at our next meeting. All right, approval of minutes from the January 5th and January 19th school committee meetings. I believe you all received those in the packet. So I will make a motion to approve the minutes of January 5th, 2022. Second. Dr. Carroll, do you have some questions?
I'm sorry, I have a minor change to propose.
Thank you. Yes, please. I love that when you do that.
I'm sorry. So
I love it.
On I was just talking about Dr. Abozena, and I know that it's on page 9 of the January 5th minutes. I think there was just a question of the spelling of her name.
Yep.
So I was just gonna, for the record, have her correct spelling of her name.
That'd be great.
Her last name, capital A-B-O hyphen capital Z-E-N-A.
Wonderful. I'll make sure that change gets made.
Should I say my one for the next minutes yet or not yet?
Yeah, we can approve. So we can approve these minutes with the change of the spelling, and then we'll do the next one. Is that okay? Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So the motion on the table is to approve the minutes of January 5th, 2022. Do I have a second?
Second.
With the change to the correct spelling of Dr. Abalozena's name, and we'll make sure that happens. Was it spelled correctly everywhere else? Was it just the one spot? Because it's in the next meeting minutes, right? No. Okay.
I'm referring to, in that meeting, it was her citizen speak.
Right.
I didn't see her named in the next minutes.
Okay. All right. This will be a roll call vote then. Member Rosmarin?
Yes.
All right. Dr. Carroll? Yes.
Sorry. Yes.
Okay. Member Rosteni?
Yes.
Member White?
Yes.
And Dr. Craighead?
Yeah.
And Margaret Eberhardt, yes. Okay, wonderful. All right, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 19th, 2022.
Second.
Corrections, comments, deletions? Yes, Member Rosemary.
Couple of corrections. Under strategic planning, there was mention that it will be a robust plan, and the new plan, and it should have been, but the current plan is a robust plan. And it's
just the wording of that. We can maybe we will. All right, so maybe that's a little bit more of a correction. Okay.
And then there's another one where I'm talking about the people who are leading the strategic planning work, and it just had Susan Maselli, but I wanted to add that Karen McDavitt was also involved in that.
Okay, Karen McDavitt. So maybe we'll hold off on approving that and do it the next time if we have to make some actual corrections to what's said there. Is that what you're saying about the current plan versus the?
Yeah, and it's a simple change. So
a simple change. Okay, are you comfortable with making those suggestions and approving them?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Dr. Carroll.
On page 9, just a quick correction. So I had questioned the possibility of spreading out. This is the cost of the new curriculum. spreading out the one-time cost of the new curriculum over more than the one fiscal year. So basically over 2 fiscal years or more. And because then the answer was that, yes, stretching it out would lead to a delay.
Okay.
So the correction is just more than one.
More than 1 fiscal year.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. So the motion on the table is to approve the minutes. I think it was seconded, yes, with the corrections on the wording around the strategic plan, who's leading the strategic plan, and then spreading out the cost for more than 1 fiscal year. All right. This will be a roll call vote. Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Dr. Craighead?
Yes.
Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
Member White?
Yes.
Member Rosemarin?
Yes.
Member Abart, yes, 6-0. Okay, thank you all very much. Okay, at our next meeting, which will be on February 16th, we do have the strategic plan coming. We also have the Collycott people coming because we couldn't reschedule that, so we can figure that out. Are we having a prioritized budget vote?
Not until we're told to.
Okay.
We've already voted. I mean, when we voted the budget, the top 10 priorities were. Okay.
Yeah, it's on here, so I don't know if that was just a long time ago thing. What other committees would we like to have an update from? This will be the February.
We talked about getting an update on how the reporting system, who is reviewing the reporting system data and how it will be applied, or how will they be addressing whatever is reported.
Wonderful. Okay. Anything else? And then me, Chair. All right. This was a very busy meeting. Thank you all for hanging in there. I appreciate it. I mean, we could add more meetings because these good meetings go really long. I'm sorry. No, I'll be gone soon. We won't want meetings anymore.
We'll fire you.
It can fire me.
I think the long meetings are required. I just don't need 4 of them a month.
I know you all do a lot of subcommittee work, and I know that it's a lot. So I really, really, really appreciate. It's really important work. And I think tonight's meeting sort of reflects the importance of the conversation and the depth of the conversations that we have, even though they take a long time. And I really appreciate that from everybody. I really, really do. So there's a motion on the table to adjourn. It will be seconded by Dr. Craighead. This will be a roll call vote. Dr. Craighead?
Yes.
Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Member White?
Yes.
Member Rosemarin?
Yes.
Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
And Margaret Eberhardt, yes. Thank you all so much for your work tonight. Really well done meeting.
Night, everybody.
Happy everything. See you soon. Stay well, everyone.